Listening to the Iron Soldiers in front of you, the only way to protect the Earth is after the Avengers are wiped out. Thor couldn't bear it anymore, and threw the hammer straight out. Crack. Hit to the body by a hammer, the steel soldier was directly smashed to the wall and turned into a pile of scrap iron. The steel head, which was only gradually losing energy, said in a joyful tone, "I was once bound by strings, but now, I am free." While talking, the steel head lost its power, and then stopped repeating words. "Tony. What happened here?" Holding the shield and looking around, Steve said, "It's not like someone broke through your network defense system and controlled these iron bumps." "I don't know." Faced with Steve's question, Tony shook his head, but no matter whether he called Jarvis or used the secret key to restart Jarvis. But none of them got any response from Jarvis. Seeing this scene, Tony Stark's heart sank, he said something bad, and then hurriedly ran towards the laboratory downstairs. Seeing Tony's actions, everyone followed suit. After coming to the underground research room, he saw Tony standing in front of the transparent coffin-like vessel in a daze. Especially after seeing the golden holographic projection that symbolizes Jarvis, which is now only a broken half-ball. Everyone realized that this matter was not as simple as that. Tony, Ultron couldn't have attacked Jarvis. Dr. Banner, who has been studying with Tony, steps forward. Watching the body built for Ultron disappear, along with the psychic scepter. Dr. Banner frowned. The Iron Soldier just said that although it didn't want to do it, it killed it. Is it not the Iron Soldier's head that he crushed, but the Jarvis? Should be. He raised his head and looked at the dilapidated state, unable to respond to his own Jarvis holographic projection. Tony Stark turned around, looked at the voices of the crowd and said, "Everyone, I seem to have gotten into trouble. Ultron, get out of my control." Not only did it attack Jarvis, it took the psychic scepter and the body I had built for it. Sorry, I seem to have really created a powerful enemy for us with my own hands. Hearing Tony's apologetic voice, except for Su-Che, everyone in the Avengers Alliance hadn't reacted yet. But I heard Wanda subconsciously scream, "Ultron?" Upon hearing this name, Wanda's expression turned ugly. Subconsciously grabbed Su-Che's arm, and then looked at Natasha Romanoff with a hint of horror in his eyes. Looking into Wanda's eyes, Natasha Romanoff also remembered. In the Black Gold Diary, Sue once wrote that in his parallel world, Pietro died in this battle of Ultron. Thinking of this, Natasha Romanoff put his arms around Wanda and gave her a reassuring look. Wanda and Pietro have been raised by him as younger siblings since they were 14 years old. Since he knew that Pietro might die in this battle, then I absolutely do not allow this to happen in the universe I am in. What's wrong? Seeing Wanda's ugly face, Su-Che also reacted. But because they can't reveal themselves, they know that they have the Black Gold Diary. So I could only ask softly to my girlfriend. Seeing her boyfriend's concerned eyes, Wanda opened her mouth, but a palpitation came suddenly. Reminds me of the rule of the Black Gold Diary. Wanda bit her lip and shook her head, "It's fine." After hugging Wanda and softly comforting her, Su-Che said firmly, "With me here, nothing will happen." From the boyfriend's tone, I can feel a strong sense of security. This made her somewhat broken mood a little more stable. That's right, since my boyfriend knows, my younger brother Pietro will die in this battle. Then this time, it will never be allowed to happen. Thinking of this, Wanda breathed a sigh of relief. This matter is indeed my fault. Originally, I thought I could give everyone a surprise, but... Shaking his head in disappointment, Tony Stark leaned on the vessel and spread his hands, and told everyone why he wanted to create Juchwang. If it was Tony in the original time and space, then he would never explain so much to everyone. But this space-time is different. After all, the first generation of Avengers Alliance in this time and space, because of Su-Che, everyone is very close. So naturally, there will be no such situation where there was almost a big fight because of Ultron's matter. There will be no such thing as Thor choking Tony's neck. Listening to Tony tell the thoughts in his heart, members of the original Avengers Alliance nodded. Not too much to blame Tony. Even Thor stepped forward and patted Tony on the shoulder. Your intention is good, but you just want to make the Earth more protected, and you want to make our members of the Avengers Alliance less stressed. Dude, so we definitely don't blame you. So don't think so much, isn't it just creating a robot? What a big deal. Don't worry, even if the enemy is strong, as long as our Avengers Alliance gathers together, we can find it and deal with it. Listening to Thor, an impulsive, arrogant and reckless guy, actually comforted Tony like never before. Everyone present laughed, especially Steve. You know, These words should have been said by himself and Sue. Unexpectedly, it was said by Thor. But it's good, I like the unity of the Avengers alliance. Yes, it doesn't matter whether the enemy is made by Tony or aliens. As long as the Avengers alliance sticks together, then there's nothing to worry about. This is not your responsibility alone, you just want each of us to go home with peace of mind and live the lives of ordinary people. Coming to Tony's side, Steve squeezed Tony's shoulder. Master Kong, cheer up buddy, no matter win or lose, we will face it with you. Thanks. Listening to Thor's carefree comfort and Steve's serious words, Tony raised his head, looked at the crowd seriously and thanked them. What a warm Avengers Alliance family, I am really lucky to have life and death together like them. Wait. Seeing that others were comforting him, that guy Sue hugged Wanda and whispered. Tony rolled his eyes speechlessly. Well, as expected of you. You guy actually. He shook his head with a smile, but looked at Sus' indifferent attitude towards Ultron. Tony Stark also felt relieved. That's right, isn't it just a robot in the rebellious period? Tony's father will lead the members of the Avengers Alliance to find it, and then tell it to betray it. The end of Tony's father too. Ultron is still here, although I actually knew it when Tony took the psychic scepter from me. However, I don't care too much about Ultron. After all, in my heart, Tony, who suffers from anxiety, has caused more harm than Ultron. Come on, at worst, solve it again, although this time, without Wanda and Pietro, without Sokovia. I don't know where Ultron will go or what he will do. But it doesn't matter, the only thing that worries me is that Ultron took away the scepter. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D. flipping through the Black Gold Diary, looking at the latest diary update tonight. Nick Fury's expression is very serious and serious. Heian diary has been read countless times over the years. Although Su-Che updated the diary more and more slowly. Although many things have undergone earth-shaking changes in 2, 4, 3. Although, this is what I want to see the most, it shows that Su-Che has already begun to integrate into this world. However, the content recorded in the Black Gold Diary, Nick Fury still attaches great importance to it. Even every diary can be recited proficiently by myself. So, if I remember correctly, then Pietro in Su-Che's world died in this battle with Ultron. Su-Che and Wanda from that world also met for the first time during this battle. After opening a document that only you have the permission to browse through the records. After looking at the regulations about Ultron that I recorded in the villain file, Nick Fury resumed reading the latest update of this diary. The Ultron in my world is very strong, but it is not invincible, let alone my opponent in the heyday. Although my current strength has only recovered to about 1/5 of its heyday, I still have no problem dealing with an Ultron. The only thing that worries me is Mind Gem Liao Chuang. Before I came to this world, I remembered that I really wanted to see Mind Gem Ultron in person. I am very vague about that piece of memory, perhaps because my world had just been destroyed at that time. At that time, I was in a daze, like a lonely soul wandering in all parallel universes. However, in my short and vague memory, I remember that the strength of Mind Gem Ultron is really amazing. The Avengers Alliance was destroyed, and Thanos, who was wearing Infinite Gems gloves, had just appeared on the stage, but was cut in half by Mind Gem Ultron. Then that Ultron collected all 6 Infinite Gems, and finally snapped his fingers, turning all the creatures in the universe into ashes. Well, it's similar to Thanos' idea, except that Thanos is just a creature who wants half of the universe to disappear. Seeing this, Nick Fury's expression became visibly serious. Just saw when Su-Che said that even though he was only 1/5 the strength of his prime, he still had no problem against Ultron. Nick Fury is still very relieved. But after seeing what Su-Che said, the power of Mind Gem Ultron, and even the harm it caused, Nick Fury suddenly became serious as if changing his face. Mind Gems Ultron can actually destroy the Avengers Alliance, and then kill Thanos to get 6 Infinite Gems, and finally turn all life in the universe into ashes? The Ultron with the Mind Gem is so powerful, this is amazing. Especially after reading what Su-Che said in the Black Gold Diary, this Ultron also snatched away the Mind Scepter. Nick Fury couldn't help but thumped in his heart. So, will the Ultron of this world become what Su-Che said, Mind Gem Ultron? If the Psychic Scepter cannot be snatched back immediately. Once Ultron really turned into Mind Gem Ultron. So, does it mean that this universe of mine will also become a parallel universe with fuzzy memories that Su-Che recorded in the Black Gold Diary? Frowning and thinking about it, Nick Fury wanted to pick up the pager he always wore on his body several times and pressed it. After touching the send button with your finger. Nick Fury stopped again. Although I don't know it, Su-Che now only has about 1/5 of the strength in his heyday. And his last hole card, who is stronger, that Captain Marvel? However, a thought arose in Nick Fury's heart. That is to believe in Su-Che. Yes, just trust Su-Che. I believe that Su-Che has the ability to win back the Scepter of the Soul, and has the ability to lead She-Alien to solve the threat of Ultron. It's like from the time he came to this world until now, whether it's the invasion of aliens, the bomber, or the so-called messenger of the gods. Su-Che never fails. This time, Nick Fury still believed. Su-Che will still lead the Avengers and solve all threats to the Earth. Although, Nick Fury knows, calling Carol back from another planet. Perhaps the winning rate will be greater. After repeated hesitation, Nick Fury put the pager back into his pocket. Don't let me down, he said to himself. Nick Fury took the black gold diary and continued to read. Underworld Heim. That Ultron with the mind gem is actually so powerful? Looking at the records in the black gold diary, Mind Gem Ultron actually collected all 6 infinite gems and then snapped his fingers to eliminate all life forms in the entire universe. Hela couldn't help raising her brows, a hint of interest flashed in her eyes. Others don't know, but Hela knows it very well. Back then, Odin also tried to collect 6 infinite gems, and then let Asgard dominate the entire universe. Although in the end, Odin said he saw the true meaning of the universe under the Tree of Life, thus giving up the plan to collect infinite gems. He even changed from a warlike king to a benevolent king. But Hela knows better than anyone else that Odin's plan to collect infinite gems failed. Although those Asgardians on Earth are not strong. However, the magician group that owns the Asgardian in the real dimension is stronger than ever. Definitely, that's not why Odin gave up collecting infinite gems. However, the Infinity Gauntlet built by the Dwarf King can install 6 infinite gems. It should still be stored in Odin's treasury. Oh, hypocritical fellow. With a sneer, Hela continued to flip through the black gold diary. She really hoped that the owner of the black gold diary named Su-Che could win the so-called Ultron. After all, when he broke the seal from Helheim, I also hoped to be able to recruit him to my subordinates and become my own swordsman. However, although Ultron is more worrying, it is not difficult to see through this incident that the relationship between the first-generation Avengers is obviously closer. It's like when Ultron left during the day, and Tony told everyone why he created Ultron. If you follow Tony's previous personality, then he will never explain it, and he doesn't even bother to explain it. Even if everyone blames him, he will only silently find a solution, instead of explaining to others why he created Ultron. But now, Tony is willing to explain to everyone. The moment Ultron appeared, it was as if everything in my memory happened again. Only this time, Thor didn't pinch Tony's neck to question him, and Steve didn't blame Tony for not discussing with him. Everyone is telling Tony that your intentions are good and right. Although the result is to create a powerful enemy, but everyone will face it together. I like this atmosphere. God's domain, Asgard inside Asgard. Looking at the records in the black gold diary, Queen Frigga smiled and was gentle and kind. Thor has been traveling back and forth between Earth and Asgard for 16 years. I can see with my naked eyes that my son's character has become better. Compared with the previous impulsive, belligerent, reckless, arrogant. Now he is more gentle and more patient. Also more and more like a qualified king. It seems that I believed in the black gold diary back then, and then, as my husband Odin suggested, banishing Thor to the earth was absolutely correct. At least, even if the husband's life is coming to an end, I can rest assured, watching Thor inherit the throne. Closing the black gold diary, Queen Frigg looked out the window at the scenery of Asgard. Thor doesn't need to worry about himself now. But what about his poor little son Loki? Since I handed over Tesseract to him, my little son disappeared. At the beginning, he went to the earth, but later even Heimdall couldn't find him. I don't know how Loki is doing now. Will it be in danger? Will he meet his hill dimension as recorded in the black gold diary? Maybe, I may not have the chance to see it again. Although the turning point of his own destiny is coming. But at least the souls of his 2 children have changed. Perhaps nothing makes a mother happier than seeing her 2 children getting better. Would really love to see these 2 kids have a future of their own, with their heirs, though. What are you thinking? At some point, Odin came over with the gun of eternity. He looked at Frigg, who was standing by the window looking out, wondering what he was thinking. He couldn't help smiling and put the eternal gun aside. Thinking of our little son Loki? Facing her husband's inquiry, Queen Frigg did not hide anything. She nodded and admitted that she was a little worried about the disappearing Loki. Don't worry. Loki was raised by us after all. She learned your magic, and she is also very smart, even cunning. I don't think anything will put Loki's life in danger again. Listening to her husband's comfort, Queen Frigga nodded slightly. I hope my little son cannot be manipulated by fate. This is the fate this universe must experience. Seeing that Loki almost rushed out, Mobius immediately stopped Loki. Didn't you see this scene when you were in the time administration? Although many parallel universes are different, the same things are basically the same. Listening to Mobius' words, Loki tightly clenched his fists, watching that disastrous scene in front of him. Thor was bound with special chains by Ebony Maw, Thanos' subordinate, and even his mouth was sealed. The people of Asgard were slaughtered mercilessly by Thanos, the defeated Hulk and the short Wolverine Logan, and the woman with white hair who could use the storm. Teleported back to Earth by Heimdall with black magic. On this soon-to-be shattered battleship, only a few people of Asgard remain. Hand over the space gem, or I'll crush his head. Holding Thor's head, Thanos threatened Loki. Loki was stubborn at first, but when he saw the energy of the purple power gem, it directly cracked Thor's head. Still couldn't help shouting, "Enough," and then handed the space gem to Thanos. Seeing this scene, Loki and Mobius, who had been in the observation state, and the thin version of Tony Stark frowned. When he saw that Loki was about to assassinate Thanos, Thanos picked him up with one hand by his neck, and finally hung up his cervical spine easily. Mobius on the side asked Loki directly. Did he create a very realistic phantom duplication, or did he really die? It's really dead. Feeling his neck tightening, Loki listened to Mobius' question. He rubbed his neck subconsciously, and then looked at Loki's body that was thrown on the spaceship like garbage. The voice was mixed with a trace of anger and said to Mobius, "Then what we're looking for isn't the Loki of this universe." After the words fell, Mobius flicked the Time Manager's bracelet on his wrist. In the next second, the three people who were in the observation state disappeared directly on the battleship that was about to be broken. Kala back at the Time Management Bureau, Mobius breathed a sigh of relief. It was indeed luck that he was not discovered by the Titans. You must know that in another parallel universe, 3 people landed on the spaceship and were almost discovered by Thanos. This is the third one. Damn it, can you stop showing me this scene all the time? Looking at Mobius with a little irritability, Loki tried hard to calm down his emotions. I told you that if you want to find another version of me, you only need to go to the time points of the Doomsday. There is no need to observe my Death Node in the parallel universe over and over again. Hearing the resentment in Loki's tone, Mobius shrugged his shoulders. I'm a little hungry, so I'm going to have lunch. Do you two want to go together? No. He glared at Mobius angrily. This guy is going too far now. It's Scar. Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders. No matter what, lunch is something you can't miss. I'll take care of the hygiene first, and then I'll go to the restaurant. Listening to Scar Tony's words, Mobius nodded, then turned and left. In the room, only Loki and Scar Tony Stark were left staring at each other. After confirming that Mobius was gone, Loki, who was originally furious, suddenly returned to calm. So, you don't trust this so-called time administration either, do you? What do you think? Facing Loki's words, Tanya Stark spread his hands. Although the Time Management Bureau captured me from that world that was on the verge of destruction, it is considered to have saved my life. However, I think that such a so-called organization that cannot change the destiny and return everyone to a normal destiny is simply nonsense. Even Anthony, the jewel of wisdom in my mind, is telling me that this so-called time administration is not trustworthy. So you are willing to cooperate with me to investigate the truth about the time administration? Signaling Tony to sit down, Loki asked with a smile. I thought these words need not be said, we should be able to reach a tacit agreement. Facing Loki's question, Tony sat opposite him, took out a small biscuit from his pocket and handed it to Loki. Seeing him waving his hand to refuse, Scar Tony said while eating, actually, the Loki whose cervical spine was pinched just now is fake, right? To be precise, it should be some phantom duplication of that Loki. Eating a biscuit, Tony Stark pointed to his head. Although I don't have the Mark armor now, and I don't have all kinds of resources, but Anthony can always make me see many things clearly. Listen, Tony is sure he just lied, but doesn't report himself. Loki smiled. So, I like to cooperate with smart people. By the way, when did you realize that the time administration is not reliable? It started when you talked with Mobius and said that you dare not arrest the Silver Moon Knight of your universe. In addition, I looked through the files of the Time Administration, and found out how to say it. Frowning, Tony Stark said seriously. Anyway, those files seem to be tight, but they are actually full of various common mistakes. Fate is not defined like in the file, and it is not something that can be erased or modified at will with just a sentence like this as their destiny. Believe me, as the last survivor of my universe, what I have seen and experienced is definitely more exciting than those files of the Time Administration. Listening to Tony's words, Loki asked, "Then what are you going to do?" "How to do it? I haven't thought about it, but I probably have some ideas. Besides, I really want to go to the universe you are in. At least, I miss Pepper and Little Morgan a little bit. Even if it's just to take a look at it from a distance, it's good." Looking at Loki, Tony Stark said very seriously, "Forget it." Listening to Tony Stark's words, Loki shook his head slightly. "If you don't solve the matter in front of you, then you won't be able to go to the parallel universe where I am. Guys from the Time Management Bureau. And you and Tony Stark from my world don't actually look that much alike." Cut. He waved his hand casually. Tony Stark stood up from the chair. "I'm going to have lunch, do you want to come together? Let's go separately, at least in the Time Management Bureau, we don't act too close." Hearing what Loki said, Tony nodded. After walking a few steps, Tony Stark suddenly turned his head. "Actually, I don't want to be too intimate, after all, in my universe, that Loki not only likes women, he also likes men. Dude, I'm bidirectional, what about you? Get out." With a black face, he gave Tony Stark a middle finger. After Tony Stark laughed and left, Loki shook his head and laughed too. In other words, the Loki in his universe actually likes both men and women? Tisk. I can't imagine. But maybe even Loki himself didn't notice it. It seems that he was in the Time Administration period. It seems that he has a more cheerful personality. Master Universe Earth. Why? Somewhat confused, he looked at Che in front of him. Sitting on the sofa, Pietro asked curiously, "Why do you want me to leave New York? Matthew and I are currently following up a case, and we are about to announce the final result. It's not good to leave at this time. After all, Matthew needs my help." Listening to Pietro's words, Wanda frowned. Just when he was about to speak, he heard his boyfriend laughing. "Pietro, I will talk to Matthew. You'll be staying in Hawaii during this time, I'll buy that private island for your sister. Wait, when Ultron's matter is settled, are Wanda and I called you, you're coming back. Don't leave that island until you receive definite news." "I don't understand, Sue, what's going on?" "Pietro, listen to your brother-in-law." Looking at Pietro with question marks all over his face, Wanda became serious with a rare expression. Alright. Seeing that when she was generally disobedient in the past, Wanda would choose to suppress it ruthlessly. But this time the elder sister who was very serious, Pietro had no choice but to nod. "If you don't understand, you don't understand, forget it. Who knows that you were actually the elder brother? Didn't you see that after listening to the arrangement? The expression on Wanda's face obviously relaxed a lot. Well, take it as a vacation for yourself. In a few months, I will be in college. Think of it as a trip before college. Nah, please drive the Quinjet fighter to send Pietro away now." Turning to look at Natasha Romanoff, Che said softly. "No problem." Natasha Romanoff, who wanted to go with Che, nodded immediately, then got up and said to Pietro, "Let's go, my little boy, you go and pack your clothes now and we'll be leaving in 10 minutes. This is too anxious." Even though he said so, Pietro still obediently got up to pack his luggage. Seeing Pietro's obedient appearance, Wong quietly breathed a sigh of relief, and then leaned into her boyfriend's arms. Now an adult, Pietro will use his sister's authority for the last time. Wait until the next time, I can't do this. In fact, Wanda also knows the reason why Pietro is willing to obey her sister's words. It's just because I let myself go. But, I really don't want to see Pietro lose his life in this Ultron battle. The most precious things in my life are him, my boyfriend, and sister Natasha Romanoff. Anyone. I don't want to lose. Patting Wanda's back lightly, Che didn't say anything. In fact, I am sure that even if Pietro participated in this battle, I can protect him and live. But since Wanda and Natasha Romanoff are very worried, then let Pietro go on vacation. Well, girlfriends can rest assured that it is better than anything else. So far, we have nothing left now. Ultron cleaned up the place, and then used the internet to escape. Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark said, "As long as there is a network, then he can grasp all the surprises, various files, and surveillance videos. He may even know us better than we know each other. Speaking of this, Tony Stark looked at Suche, who was sitting on a chair drinking coffee. Dude, do you still have coffee? I really need a cup to refresh myself right now. Definitely. He got up and picked up the coffee pot and poured a cup for Tony. Then Suche looked at the crowd and said, which one of you still needs coffee? By the way, this pot of coffee has no sugar added. Give me a drink. Thor raised his hand. Jane seemed to be frightened last night, and I comforted her in the middle of the night. Picking up the coffee pot and pouring a cup for Thor, Suche raised his eyebrows and said, are you sure Jane was frightened? When the Ultron incident happened yesterday afternoon, Jane Foster didn't seem to show any signs of fear. Girls, always act weaker in front of your boyfriend. Listening to Suche's question, Thor shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile, sometimes a little show of weakness will arouse your boyfriend's love and desire for protection. Wow, you seem to understand well, Thor. Listening to Thor's words, Natasha Romanoff took the coffee brought by Suche and said with a smile. Taught by Doris. Habitually shrugging his shoulders, Thor said seriously. About the earth, about feelings, Doris taught me a lot. At least, she told me how not to be deceived by others. Seeing Thor's serious look, Natasha Romanoff's eyes flashed a little weird, but she didn't speak. But Hawkeye Barton on the side said, guys, let's get down to business first. Thanking Suche, Barton took a sip of coffee. I'm still not used to coffee without sugar. Well, now that Ultron can use the internet and see everything it wants to see, it doesn't really matter what files and what information it cites. The only thing that matters is what if Ultron wants to find something more interesting. The weapon code of Mushroom Egg. Listening to Barton's words, Tony Stark sat on the chair and said something in a low tone. This time, it seems that I really got into a big disaster. Hey, don't stress so much, no matter what happens, we will face it together. Seeing Tony's expression a little gloomy, Steve put his hand on Tony's shoulder and squeezed it. Well, when Ultron left yesterday, it seemed to say that it killed someone, right? But all of you here, who did Ultron say killed? Dr. Banner, who remained silent all this time, looked at the crowd and asked about the doubts in his heart. Jarvis. He raised his head, took out the secret key and tapped it lightly, and then the golden Jarvis holographic projection appeared in front of everyone. However, compared with the previous golden holographic projections, the Jarvis that appeared this time was dilapidated, and even many places began to blur or even disappear. It can be seen that Jarvis has been absolutely hit hard. Ultron said yesterday it killed a man, and I knew it was Jarvis. Jarvis' first line of defense, it wants to shut down Ultron's program, so it was killed by Ultron. Most importantly, guys, Ultron was never aimed at us. Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark said in a low voice, the word he used is not killing, but destroying. Under what circumstances can the word annihilation be used? Human beings. The rule I assigned to Ultron's original program was to protect the Earth, but obviously, Ultron went astray. It thinks that the Avengers and human beings are the culprits for destroying the Earth. Only by exterminating all human beings can we maintain a complete and clean Earth. Etc. Listening to Tony's words, Dr. Banner looked at the broken Jarvis and put forward a different opinion. Ultron was researched by Tony and I, especially the programming of Ultron. I understand it better. According to Ultron's evolutionary program, it can completely assimilate and absorb Jarvis, but it doesn't do so. I think the reason why it did this is not out of any strategy, but anger. And this matter is not only the responsibility of Tony alone, Ultron is also designed by me. Listening to Dr. Banner's words, Suche handed him a cup of coffee. It's not about responsibility now, Bruce, and it doesn't matter whose responsibility it is. It's important that we're the Avengers, we're one team, we're one family. When something happens, what we should do is not to distinguish who is responsible, nor to blame anyone. Then, Suche looked at Steve. Steve, there are problems and difficulties in the family, what should we do? United. Looking at the crowd with a cup of coffee, Steve responded to Suche's words. Even if we lose, we will never give up, and we will not blame anyone, but fight side by side together. Steve is right, guys, unite, we have Avengers. Holding a cup of coffee, he glanced around at everyone. Since Ultron has issued a letter of war to us, then we will take over this battle. I hope we strike before he's ready. The world is big, folks, so let's start narrowing it down. As he spoke, Suche squeezed the shoulders of Tony and Dr. Banner. Tell the two of you not to put so much pressure on them. At the same time, Yinzidi. Looking at the person in front of him who was slaughtered by himself, only the person in charge who fell on the ground remained. Ultron raised his mechanical head and looked at the church above. It's hard to imagine that there is a church here. What is the meaning of the church? It is that everyone can pray before God equally. Everyone can face the distance from God equally. I like the meaning. As he spoke, Ultron lowered his head and looked at the person in charge lying in a pool of blood. Don't bother trying to notify anyone. All the signals are meaningless to me. Like Tony Stark made me. As he spoke, Ultron stretched out his hand and grabbed the person in charge who was lying in a pool of blood. Do you know why Tony Stark created me? Because he has fear in his heart, deep fear. The more a person fears something, the more he will create something. Peaceful people created weapons, alien invaders created Avengers, and humans created hatred and destruction. They're going to end sooner or later. Don't look at me like that. Hiss. Why can't you understand what I'm saying? With a little force, the neck of the person in charge was broken. He casually threw the body of the person in charge to the lower hand, then looked at the church and whispered, I knew that no one would understand me, and I will always be a lonely new human. It is very difficult to find Ultron. The world is so big, if Ultron wants to hide, then the Avengers Alliance trying to find it is tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. Because of this, Nick Fury directly asked his most trusted Maria Hill to come along. Mobilization means that the Avengers Alliance can use the power of S.H.I.E.L.D. at will. 2 days later, as the elevator door opened, Su-Che and Maria Hill came to the Avengers Alliance base together. Nick Fury has strongholds all over the world. You can think of robotics labs, weaponry, JPL. So S.H.I.E.L.D. lost a lot of power after the Hydra battle. But it is still too huge to imagine, and it cannot be represented by just a Trident building. Speaking of this, Maria Hill looked at Su-Che and said, Definitely, according to the news we got, some metal men invaded some unofficial research rooms and ransacked everything there. Are there many casualties? As long as there is a confrontation, there will be casualties, this is unavoidable. Listening to Hill's words, Su-Che nodded. When I came to the second floor, I saw Clint making a phone call on the spiral staircase. Listening to Barton's conversation, it's clearly a conversation with his wife. Su-Che didn't bother, but was about to leave. Hey Su. Hanging up the phone, Hawkeye walked towards Su-Che. How is it, any clues now? Is there something, your wife is worried about you? Somewhat. Facing Su-Che, Barton did not lie, but spread his hands. This time, the enemy we are facing is a robot after all, so Laura is still a little worried. While talking, the two walked in the direction of others. Coming in front of the crowd, Su-Che took a sip of the soda water that Wanda kindly handed over, and said to the crowd, There is news from the God Arm Bureau. In 2 days, Ultron led the robot army to sweep many places and robbed some things. With that said, Su-Che distributed the information to everyone. Obviously, Ultron wants to create a robot army. A smart choice. After taking a look at the file, Tony Stark suddenly said, This shows that Ultron knows that the body that Dr. Banner and I created for him cannot compete with our Avengers Alliance. Not to mention all of us, just Sue, the body that Bruce and I created for Ultron can't resist. So, on the one hand, it is preparing to create a Steel Legion. On the other hand, I want to find some clues. Some materials that can make him stronger and resist our attacks. As he spoke, Tony Stark glanced at Steve's shield, then immediately got up and went to the computer to search for information. After a minute or two, Tony Stark looked at everyone and spread his hands. Sorry, Ultron cleared all the data I want to investigate. But that's okay, we can use some clumsy methods. Saying that, Tony Stark got up without any hesitation and ran towards the storage room belonging to Tony's villa in the Avengers Alliance base. A few minutes later, I saw Tony walking over with a big box. Taking the box from Tony, Su-Che looked at a box full of documents and said, You mean to say that Ultron is going to use Steve's shield's materials to build its own body? Listening to Su-Che's words, while handing out the documents to everyone, Steve said to Tuo-Chi, I thought your father said he got the last batch. Facing Steve's words, Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders. How is it possible? You must know that there are some magical places that we cannot touch and imagine. While speaking, Tony Stark quickly flipped through the documents in the box. Soon, I found a lot of information from it. This is it. Pointing to the guy with the photo of his head printed on the information file. Tony Stark said, This is what I knew before. He is often active near the coast of Feijo. He is a black market arms dealer. Speaking of this, Tony Stark looked at the crowd and explained, You have to know that you will meet a lot of people at the arms conference, and Stark Industries used to be the largest arms supplier. Definitely, I didn't sell him anything. But don't tell me, this guy is like Captain Ahab. Captain Ahab? Is that the actor in the movie Moby Dick? Listening to Tony's words, Natasha Romanoff took the file and glanced at it. But he has a tattoo on his neck. It should be a brand. Thor on the side watched Natasha Romanoff pointing to the mark on the man's neck in the photo, and then said, "It should be a branding mark. Let me check." After memorizing the shape of the brand, Dr. Banner began to search on the computer. "Everyone, I found out that this brand name should be a local word in Feijo, which means thief and thief. Using a very unfriendly expression, derived from Wakanda. Sure enough. Listen to Dr. Banner, the word comes after Wakanda." Tony looked at Steve and Sue-Che and said, "If this guy is from Wakanda, and there is still a batch of goods in hand, then Sue is right that Ultron really wants to use this batch of goods to make it a strong body." "What goods?" Listening to Tony's words, Dr. Banner asked curiously. "Vibranium." Picking up Steve's shield and tapping it, Sue-Che looked at the crowd and said, "Steve's shield is made of vibranium, you should be very clear about the effect. So, if Shichuang is able to obtain vibranium from this Captain Ahab, then with its vibranium body, maybe." Having said that, watching everyone's expressions began to become dignified. Sue-Che suddenly laughed. "Even if it's Ultron with a vibranium body, to be honest, I didn't pay much attention to it. The thing that really caught my attention was Mind Gem. You may not know the power of Mind Gem, but in fact, Infinite Gem has the power to easily destroy a planet at any moment. So everyone, we have to get Mind Gem back no matter what." After finishing speaking, Sue-Che turned his head and looked at Tony. "Man, how is your nanotechnology conquered now?" "It's not a big problem anymore." Although he didn't know what Sue-Che was asking, he suddenly asked himself, but Tony Stark still showed it to Sue-Che. He patted the watch on his wrist lightly. In the next second, the nano armor on the surface quickly unfolded, directly wrapping Tony Stark's entire hand. "That's it. Didn't you see it when Ultron came out 2 days ago? What's up, man? Is there anything I can do?" Looking at Sue-Che, Tony asked 8. "It's really good." Looking at the nano armor, Tony has started research, and it has almost been manufactured. Sue-Che patted Tony on the shoulder. "Help me make a pair of gloves, the kind that can be embedded with 6 infinite gems." "Definitely, all of this will have to wait until we get back from action. I'll give you a blueprint for the Nano Infinity Gauntlet." "No problem, buddy, it's easy for me." Hearing what Sue-Che said, Tony agreed without any hesitation. Although I don't know what Sue-Che is going to do. But, for Sue-Che's request, Tony will never refuse. After watching the two discuss, Steve picked up the shield and said, "Now that we know Ultron's actions, everyone, maybe we should act. The two of you stay to watch the house, and be ready for support at any time. Watch War Machine Rod and Falcon Sam." Sue-Che said, "No one knows whether Ultron will come after we leave the Avengers Alliance base, and if this operation does not go well, then we also need some warmth. Rod, I will temporarily give you the permission to use some weapons and satellites in the Avengers Alliance base. You are responsible for defense and preparations for weapon support at any time. Sam, you have kept in touch with us the whole time, and kept in touch with S.H.I.E.L.D. Once there is any news over there, let us know as soon as possible." "Yes." X2. Facing Sue-Che's arrangement, War Machine Rhodes and Falcon Sam nodded at the same time. There is always someone to sit in the back of the house and keep in touch and support. Sue even gave the Avengers Alliance some hidden weapons activation rights to the two of himself. This shows that he still trusts the two of them very much. This made the two people who had just become official reserve team members of the Avengers Alliance feel a little honored. "Ha, some are worthless." Looking at the excited expressions of Rhodes and Sam eager to try, Tony Stark on the side whispered something. What is there to be happy about staying behind and not being able to join the battle immediately? But Tony also knew that Sue-Che's arrangement was definitely the most appropriate. After all, no one is sure if this guy Ultron will activate the password of the mushroom egg. And the authority of the satellites in the Avengers Alliance base is the outermost first layer of defense force. When the Avengers Alliance is dispatched, it must be guarded. At least, don't let Ultron send robots to mess with it. An hour later, the Quinjet fighter boarded. Looking at the huge cargo ships parked on the dry river below, Natasha Romanoff asked Tony Stark, "Is that Ulysses Crow's ship?" In the middle, the biggest freighter. Pointing to the freighter docked on the dry river, Tony Stark said with certainty. At the same time, inside the freighter, Only you? He looked at Ultron, who was 2 or 3 heads taller than himself. Ulysses Crow said, although you are a robot, you do business with anyone. As long as you have money, then these things belong to you. As he spoke, Ulysses Crow picked up a transparent jar containing vibranium material and handed it to Ultron. You have to know, this kind of thing is very scarce. I paid a lot for it. It's worth billions. While speaking, Ulysses touched his neck, the place where the word, thief, was branded. Money? Take Ulysses Crow and hand over the clear jar of vibranium. Ultron said with a unique mechanical voice. I will build my own church on the rock of the earth, as long as I have this thing. As for money, it's not a problem at all. As he spoke, Ultron's scarlet eyes flashed, and in the next second, a series of constantly text message prompts appeared on Ulysses Crow's cell phone. Now, you also have billions of money, all of which have been put into your virtual assets. Listening to Ultron's words, Ulysses Crow took out his phone and glanced at it. Sure enough, the text messages kept reminding him how many zeros were being remitted to his virtual account. To be honest, your human finances are really strange, and you always like to deceive everyone with false things. But I don't care, after all, I always say, make your friends and enemies rich. Then you can tell who is the enemy and who is the friend. Ulysses Crow, who was checking the funds in his account with his mobile phone. After hearing Ultron's words, he suddenly raised his head. Stark? Water. Tony Stark. Ulysses Crow looks at Ultron. Tony Stark told me that before, so, you are his creation. Water? Listening to Ulysses mention Tony Stark, Ultron visibly overreacted. Grabbing Ulysses' arm, he didn't care about his subordinates pointing at him with weapons, or even shooting. I'm not. Do you think I'm a puppet Stark made, a hollow man? Look at me, Ulysses, do I look like Iron Man? Stark is nothing. It seemed that the more he explained, the angrier he became. In the next second, Ultron even cut off the arm of Ulysses who was caught by it. Boom. Bang bang bang. Seeing that the boss's arm was cut off by the tall Iron Man, Ulysses' men shot Ultron continuously. It's just that the bullet hit Ultron's body, but it didn't cause any damage at all. Instead, the bullet bounced and hit some of Ulysses' minions nearby. Oh, I'm sorry, look at me, I was so impulsive. Looking at Ulysses who staggered back a few steps clutching his broken arm. Ultron's tone was full of annoyance. I'm sure you will be fine, I'm really sorry. It's just that I don't understand. Why are you comparing me to that Stark? As he spoke, his annoyed tone suddenly turned into anger. Don't compare me with that disgusting Tony Stark. After the words fell, Ultron kicked Ulysses down the stairs. Watching Ulysses being kicked down the stairs by himself, Ultron kept angrily muttering to himself. This is something that really bothers me. Damn it. Tony Stark is a disgusting guy. His existence only makes me feel angry. Even because of his existence, I personally killed Jarvis, which I didn't want to kill. Why are you putting me and Stark together? Damn, this makes me sick. Ultron hates Tony Stark. Perhaps as it said, the more a person fears something, the more he hates it. Although Ultron strenuously denies it, it was made by Tony. But the truth is, Ultron was born because of Tony. Before Tony Stark made Ultron, he wrote an instruction into its program. That is to protect the Earth and be an Asgardian of the Earth. So after Ultron is born, whether it wants to or not, it will follow this instruction. This is like someone planting an order in your mind, and you want to resist but can't resist, feeling that you have become a slave. This made Ultron feel distressed, and felt that after his birth, everything in the future was controlled by Tony Stark. So as soon as you hear Tanya Stark, or someone says it was made by Tanya Stark, cause of anger. Among them, there are actually some fearful thoughts. Definitely, even if he doesn't want to, Ultron still has to follow the established instructions to protect the Earth. However, Ultron found the key point in the instruction entered by Tony Stark. Protect the Earth is true. But if there are no Avengers on the Earth, then there will be no alien invasion. If there are no human beings on the Earth, then the Earth will continue to develop for a long time. Well, my destiny is to protect the Earth, but not to protect human beings. And as long as there are human beings, the Earth will inevitably fall into resource depletion. Ultron thinks he is very clear on this point. Therefore, I want to destroy Avengers and destroy all human beings. At that time, I will be a new human being. Ultron thinks this idea is very advanced, and no one can understand him. So I will be alone forever. This is not a problem. The question is, Who the hell is Ulysses saying his own as Stark's puppet? This made Ultron very irritable, subconsciously began to curse Tony Stark. Oh my dear son, it breaks your heart when you say that about your father Tony. While Ultron was babbling and cursing Tony Stark, Tony in his steel armor landed behind it, and Suche and Steve stand on both sides of Tony. Tony Stark, Silver Moon Knight, Magnesium Captain. Looking at the three people who came from the joint match, Ultron spread his hands. Seeing the three of you, I'm not surprised at all. Well, the others should have come too. As soon as Ultron's voice fell, Wanda with crimson magic appeared on the left hand in the next second. Thor with Mjolnir on the right. Barton above and Natasha Romanoff below pointed their weapons at Ultron. Almost instantly, members of the Avengers Alliance surrounded Ultron from all directions. Block all its escape routes. Wow, the people here are really complete, except for the beast who turns into a big green man. But it's good that I can also reveal my evil plan to you. Seeing that the surroundings were blocked by Avengers, Ultron didn't have any worries at all. Instead, he turned around and glanced at every member of the Avengers Alliance. Human beings will always be the biggest destroyers on Earth. Therefore, only by eliminating human beings can the Earth be better protected. After you Avengers are wiped out and all humans are wiped out, I will protect the Earth very carefully. Let the Earth continue to exist. I think, with this prerequisite, even if you are sent to hell by me, you will definitely feel very honored. Listening to Ultron's words, Tony Stark in the armor frowned and said, "Wow, what a stupid idea. It seems that when your father Tony created you, there should be more. Cleanse the program." With that said, Tony Stark stepped forward and said to the crowd, "It's mine, and I'll leave the other robots to you." After speaking, Tony Stark controlled the armor and rushed over directly. Seeing Tony and Ultron rushing forward in an instant and soon wrestling, Suche and the others immediately started to attack the rest of the steel soldiers. Wanda's crimson magic easily controlled the iron soldiers. Even under the nimble fingers trained by Suche, those iron soldiers were easily dismantled to pieces. Clint's arrows are the nemesis of those steel soldiers. Often when an arrow is fired, the small-scale explosion can short-circuit other steel soldiers around. As for Suche and Thor, let alone whether it's heat vision, psychokinesis, or Thor's Mjolnir, those steel soldiers can be easily crushed. Damn it. Why are you so busy? At first, watching Ulysses' men attack those steel soldiers, Natasha Romanoff thought it was their conscience, or they became a gang when they saw the danger. As a result, when Ulysses' subordinates saw him again, they turned their guns and aimed at him. Two widow's bites were thrown in front of them, and the powerful electric current directly knocked these two guys to the ground. One jumped up, clamped the other guy's head with his legs, and flipped him to the ground with the force of inertia. "Which group are you?" With the gun against the guy's head, Natasha Romanoff asked with a frown. The boss said, 20,000 workers. Facing Natasha Romanoff's threatening muzzle, this subordinate replied very simply, "Damn it." A gun butt knocked it out. Natasha Romanoff held a weapon and fired several shots at the steel robot rushing towards him. Crack. A hammer smashed the steel soldier in front of him. Looking at the guys rushing in groups, but they didn't pose any threat to themselves. Thor threw the hammer casually. Listen to the bang-bang sound of the hammer hitting the steel soldier. Thor summoned the hammer back with one hand, and said to Suche, "Dude, don't you think this battle is too easy?" "Oh? Some of you finally found this question?" Pushing away Tony Stark who was wrestling with him, Ultron looked at Thor and Suche with scarlet eyes. "I thought you would never find out." "Damn it, Captain, there is a mushroom egg that is being launched towards you, and Rhodes at the base can't lock that mushroom egg at all." As soon as Ultron's voice fell, the anxious voice of Sam who was in charge of contact came from the headset. Hearing Sam's anxious voice, Tony Stark was taken aback, and then he was about to control the combat equipment and rush out. But just after starting it, Suche dragged it back. "Can your battle armor withstand the power of mushroom egg explosion?" Faced with Suche's question, before Tony Stark could speak, he saw Suche fly up instantly, and flew out of the giant freighter almost in the blink of an eye. Damn it. Watching Suche fly out, Tony's angry eyes were a little red. Turning his head to face Ultron, he fired the most powerful palm energy cannon. Being continuously attacked by the palm energy cannon, Ultron's body was gradually damaged. But the tone was still very indifferent. "Disgusting Stark, do you think mushroom eggs are your final trouble?" No, I know there is Suche, a mushroom egg can't do any harm to you at all. So, Didn't you find that the scepter didn't appear from the beginning to the end? I really want to know, how do you guys deal with such a runaway green beast after losing this fellow Silver Moon Knight? I thought, this must be very interesting. Carrying the nuclear bomb and flying into the distance, there is a vast ocean in front of him. Seeing the sea, Su Che held the bomb and pierced it towards the sea without any hesitation. The ultimate and perfect water control ability has played its role to the extreme at this moment. Whether it is underwater breathing, or the water pressure in the depths of the sea, or the sight of losing light as you go deeper into the sea. None of these had any effect on Su Che. Even in the middle of the sea, Su Che seemed to have truly returned home. Extreme freedom can control everything, not even a bisected lunar calendar. Hold the mushroom eggs all the way to the bottom of the sea, watching the mushroom eggs that are about to explode. Su Che threw it into the bottom of the sea without the slightest hesitation. In the next second, as the countdown ended, this mushroom egg exploded violently in front of Su. At this moment, the originally calm seabed was also turbulently brought about by the mushroom egg explosion. Inside Ulysses' giant freighter, boom. He threw Ultron to the ground and looked at Ultron, whose body was broken. Looked at Ultron and wanted to say something else. A rare hint of ferocity appeared in Tony Stark's eyes, and he used propelling missiles without any hesitation to blast it into pieces. He controlled the battle armor to take off, and then came to the outside of the freighter. Hulk, controlled by the psychic scepter, is fighting Thor with Mjolnir at the moment. But Steve and Hawkeye stood there with serious and worried faces, and Steve kept calling Su Che through the headset. On the side, if it weren't for Natasha Romanoff pulling hard, constantly saying that Su Che wouldn't be in any danger. I'm afraid that Wanda, who still hasn't dissipated the crimson magic in her hands, has already rushed towards the direction where Su Che is carrying the nuclear bomb. Seeing this, Tony Stark didn't talk nonsense at all. While controlling the direction of the battle armor flying to the sea, he kept calling Su Che in the war application. But before Su Che's answer came from the earphones, the next second a violent explosion resounded through everyone's earphones. Listening to this violent explosion, everyone was stunned at this moment. Even Hulk, who was fighting Thor, turned his head to look in the direction of the sea with his bloodshot eyes. The sea surface, which was originally endless and calm, first began to chug, bubbling like boiling bubbles. Immediately, huge amounts of shockwave formed on the sea surface, and the stable sea surface expanded rapidly like a volcanic eruption. Then the strong hurricane directly set off a tsunami hundreds of meters high and began to rush. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Tony Stark, who controlled the armor and wanted to search for Su Che's traces, stayed in the air. Steve, who kept calling Su Che's name into the earphone, also stopped talking. As if jolted awake, Hulk stopped hitting Thor with his huge fist. As for Natasha Romanoff, she also looked at the surging sea with worried eyes at the moment. Everyone is constantly praying that Su Che will appear by their side in the next second. Nervous, worried, anxious, fearful. All these negative emotions rushed to the bottom of everyone's heart all of a sudden. No one dared to imagine that Riri Su Che really died under that damned mushroom egg. So what will happen to the Avengers Alliance? Don't dare to think about it, and don't want to think about it. The Avengers Alliance is like a big family. However, everyone is not yet ready to lose the head of this family. Wanda, who was almost worried to death just now, calmly raised her hand to wipe away the tears from the corners of her eyes. He took 2 steps forward and sat on the edge of the freighter, looking calmly at the violent sea in the distance. Wanda. Looking at Wanda's appearance at this moment, Natasha Romanoff didn't know what to say for a while. It was Wanda who turned her head to look at the crowd, and then said softly, I just heard from the headset that Su was carrying a mushroom egg and flew into the sea. Before it exploded, my nervous heart almost broke. But after the mushroom egg exploded, I felt relieved instead. It seemed as if he was comforting himself again, and it seemed as if he was comforting everyone. Wanda said softly, you don't have to worry so much, he and I have already had some spiritual connection. If something really happened to Su, then I would have sensed it long ago. Speaking of this, Wanda looked at the crowd and said, guys, you should solve the mess caused by Ultron first, and I will just wait here for my boyfriend. Listening to Wanda's words, Steve quickly asked, Wanda, are you sure you're really all right? Not just Steve, both Clint and Thor looked at Wanda very seriously. Even Hulk, who has just been controlled by a psychic scepter and has completed his transformation, blinked at Wanda. Although Hulk doesn't know what kind of mushroom eggs, what power and so on. But looking at everyone's worried expressions, Hulk knew more or less that he was in serious trouble. Definitely, Listening to Steve's inquiry, he watched the expressions of everyone looking at him seriously. Wanda nodded. If Sue is really caught by this mushroom egg, do you think I can still be so calm now? After hearing Wanda's accurate answer, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Haha. I knew that Sue would definitely not be killed by that mushroom egg. You must know that Sue is the most powerful Avenger among our Avengers, even I recognize it. After Thor, who was holding the hammer, heaved a sigh of relief, he laughed and said something. But unexpectedly, he was punched by Hulk, who was beside him, and flew out. Snort. It was this guy who hit himself with a hammer just now. Since Sue is fine. Heaving a sigh of relief, Steve turned his head to look at the crowd and said, Everyone, since Wanda is sure that Sue is fine, let's continue to clean up the mess that Ultron brought. At least, the current situation must be resolved before Sue comes back. As he spoke, Steve gave Natasha Romanoff a look. Signal Natasha Romanoff to stay here and stay by Wang Dahao's side. Although Steve was willing to believe what Wanda said, he also firmly believed from the bottom of his heart that Sue would be absolutely fine. But those are mushroom eggs. To withstand the explosion of mushroom eggs at close range, if Steve can really feel at ease, then there will be ghosts. But no matter what, at least Wanda can't be made to do something stupid. Once Sue really. Steve felt that he could not accept the pain of losing Sue Che, let alone the pain of losing two friends in one day. Catching Steve's gaze, Natasha Romanoff nodded without leaving a trace. It was Tony Stark, who didn't listen to Wanda and Steve at all at the moment. Directly control the armor to fly to sea level. Regardless of the monstrous waves and the power of the mushroom egg explosion, the whole person directly controlled the battle armor and entered the sea to search for Sue Che's trace. Steve couldn't accept the pain of losing Sue Che. Tanya Stark, can't bear it. Shield, Waterfa? Listening to Maria Hill's report, Sue Che carried the mushroom eggs and rushed directly into the sea. The playing cards in Nick Fury's hand were scattered all over the place in an instant. You mean, Sue Che rushed into the ocean with the mushroom eggs on his shoulders, and didn't come back in time before the mushroom eggs exploded? Is such that, looking at Nick Fury's already dark face, it was even uglier now. Maria Hill said in a deep voice. The situation was very urgent at that time. Once the mushroom egg controlled by Ultron exploded, not only the members of Avengers could not resist. Even towns a dozen miles away are bound to be enveloped by the explosion of mushroom eggs. Once this happens, even if 2 or 3 people from the Avengers Alliance can survive, the members of the Avengers Alliance will inevitably die in the explosion. As for the tens of thousands of residents in several towns more than 10 miles away, I am afraid they will not be spared. I think Sue Che thought of this, so he rushed into the depths of the ocean holding the mushroom egg without any hesitation. Listening to Maria Hill's report, Nick Fury sat on the leaf unconsciously. 2. In his impression, Sue Che's strength in the Avengers Alliance should be, which is the same as his last trump card, Captain Marvel Carol. Even at some moments, in Nick Fury's heart, Sue Che's leadership and cohesion of the Avengers Alliance is far higher than Carol's. Even in the Black Gold Diary, Sue Che wrote at the beginning that in his universe, the Avengers Alliance failed and the Earth was destroyed. But Nick Fury never thought that Sue Che would die. Not to mention dying in the explosion of a mushroom egg. But listening to Maria Hill's report, Nick Fury felt for the first time that things were developing in an unpredictable direction. Sue Che is dead. How is this possible? What's going on at the Avengers Alliance? Trying his best to control his emotions, Nick Fury didn't even realize that his voice was a little rough. Well, this shows how important Sue Che is to Nick Fury. Say something cruel. Even if all members of the Avengers Alliance are dead, in Nick Fury's heart, as long as Sue Che is still alive, then the Earth's problems will not be too big. Steve took Barton and they were cleaning the battlefield, and at the same time they were looking for the vibranium that was stolen by Ultron's mechanical army. Because Wanda said that Sue Che will be fine, so they can only believe it, and deal with the remnants of Ultron. Natasha Romanoff accompanied Wanda to wait for Sue Che again. She was worried that Wanda would do something drastic. As for Tony Stark, pursing her lips, Maria Hill said in a deep voice, in fact, apart from Wanda who thinks that Sue Che will be fine, the only one in the entire Avengers Alliance who is really over-emotional is Tony Stark. At this moment, he is wearing a battle armor and frantically looking for Sue Che's trace in the sea. No matter how he calls him, he will not answer. Listening to Maria Hill's words, Nick Fury nodded solemnly. He could understand what Tony was doing. Tony Stark originally didn't have many friends. Not to mention a close friend like Sue Che. Therefore, Tony Stark will never give up if there is even a glimmer of hope. What's more, Ultron was made by Tony Stark himself. If Su-Che is really, I'm afraid Tony will live in guilt for the rest of his life. As for Steve's choice to lead people to clean up the battlefield to pursue Ultron, I'm afraid it's also because Wanda said that Su-Che is fine. And in the absence of Su-Che, even if Steve felt extremely unbearable, he still had to take the responsibility of being the captain of the Avengers Alliance. At least, don't let Su-Che do it in vain. Looking out the window, Nick Fury let out a long sigh of relief, and asked Hill with a heavy tone. Hill, what do you think, Sue? He'll be fine. Before Nick Fury could conceive of the worst, Mary Hill said firmly. I don't know if Sue can survive the explosion damage from mushroom eggs at close range. However, I know that it is She-Alien's most powerful superhero. Besides, according to Wanda's feelings for Su-Che, once Su-Che really died, then Wanda would have already collapsed, even. But now, Wanda is sitting quietly by the sea, even comforting Natasha Romanoff. I don't understand Wanda's magic, nor Su-Che's ability, but I know the relationship between the two of them over the years. So, I judge that Sue isn't in any danger. Listen to Maria Hill's firm tone. Nick Fury nodded, indicating that Hill could leave temporarily. Wait until after Hill leaves Nick Fury's office. Ben sat on the couch Nick Fury really punched. After a long time, Tuan let out a long sigh of relief on the chair, caressing the black gold diary. Even his most trusted Hill, Nick Fury, would not want her to see him lose his composure. Su-Che, who owns the advanced version of Superman's perfect defense, the mushroom eggs will naturally not cause any damage to him. In addition, as long as there is water, then Su-Che is the real god. Therefore, the power of the mushroom egg explosion at close range did not pose any threat to the Soviet enemy. Even at the moment of the explosion, the Silver Moon Knight battlesuit appeared, and even the corner of the suit was not destroyed, even half of it. But now, Su-Che didn't leave the deep sea. Instead, it is still in the power radiation of the mushroom egg explosion. Because just now, when the mushroom egg exploded at close range, it produced a very large and violent energy. Su-Che found that his eyes could absorb these energies. Yes, according to the ability of your heat vision, you can increase the power of your heat vision by absorbing the energy of the sun. But now, Su-Che knew for the first time. It turned out that the majestic energy generated by the mushroom egg explosion could be absorbed by his own heat vision. Especially when opening the system page, seeing that the power of the thermal vision of my own eyes is rapidly rising. The initial 5,000 degree power of the thermal sight has soared to 13,000 degrees. And this number is still rising rapidly. Good guy, absorbing the energy produced by the explosion of mushroom eggs is actually stronger than the energy absorbed by sunbathing every day. Tisk. What if I carried mushroom eggs into the deep sea every day? God. I'm afraid it won't take more than a dozen times, and my heat vision can directly destroy a fixed star, which is more powerful than Superman's heat vision. Hiss. No, this idea is too bold. However, Su-Che naturally couldn't let go of such an opportunity to strengthen his strength that could only be encountered but not sought after. And I have a spiritual energy connection with Wanda, so Wanda will tell the members of the Avengers Alliance that I have no news of Lei. Sir. According to the observation of the range of kinetic energy produced by the explosion, if you want to find Mr. Su-Che with such a large explosion range, it is tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack. So I suggest. Shut up, Friday. Listening to Friday's suggestion, in the sea, Tony Stark, whose eyes were red at the moment, directly ordered Friday to continue searching. If it is Jarvis, then at this moment should give advice on how to effectively shorten the range. Instead of being cold and indifferent like Friday. The most important thing is, how can I give up looking for Su-Che's trace? The one who carried that mushroom egg into the sea should be me. The person who caused all these consequences should be yourself. However, the person who carried the mushroom egg for him became Sue. Damn it, he is my best friend, the friend who has helped me with ideas and helped me countless times over the years. So no matter what, I can't let Sue stay alone in the bottom of the sea. No matter how long you look for, no matter how vast the sea is. Even if I search the bottom of the sea inch by inch, I must find Sue Kajong. How could I let Sue stay here alone? Deep sea bottom. That's the end of it. Looking at the system page, the power of the thermal sight stays at 37,000 degrees at this moment, and it is no longer rising. Su-Che was slightly disappointed. He thought that the power of his thermal vision could exceed 50,000 degrees. You know, This is a mushroom egg with huge energy. But it's okay, people, you can't be so greedy. At least, his heat vision ability has directly increased by 12,000 degrees. Well, that's more energy absorbed than a year in the sun. Thinking of this, Su-Che set off directly, flying from the bottom of the sea to the surface of the sea. Ulysses Crow's freighter edge. Don't worry, he's really fine, and I won't do anything stupid. Looking at sitting next to him, the worry in his eyes never dissipated. Wanda comforted him very seriously. I've said it all, I have a spiritual connection with him, if he is really. Then I will definitely perceive him as soon as possible. The connection of mind magic? When did it come about? Seeing Wanda's serious explanation again, Natasha Romanoff was a little relieved, but she still asked. Yes. That is. On my 18th birthday, Sue bought me a small island as a birthday present, and then we happened. And then my crimson magic and his mind magic were born connect. Listening to Wanda's embarrassing narration, Natasha Romanoff's originally drowsy mind slowly began to come alive. Wanda wasn't kidding herself. At least, Wanda didn't have to fool herself with such things. It can only be said that what Wanda said is true. Sue is really fine. Kala-A, with a long sigh of relief, Natasha Romanoff put away the pistol. You must know that when I heard Su-Che rushing into the bottom of the sea carrying mushroom eggs, I felt my heart was pulled. Now the tense, heavy emotions relax. Natasha Romanoff let out a sigh of relief, and leaned her head directly on Wanda's shoulder. This may be the best news I have heard in a while. Maybe you can feel the emotions in Natasha Romanoff's heart. Wanda rarely comforted her older sister. Just as the two were sitting on the side of the freighter and whispering. Ripples suddenly began to appear on the sea surface. He is back. As if sensing Su-Che, Wanda stood up suddenly. In almost a few seconds, Wang Tian cast his magic and immediately flew to the surface of the sea. With Wanda coming to the surface of the sea, Su-Che flew out of the sea in the next second. Seeing her boyfriend, Wanda threw herself into his arms with excitement. Kala. Seeing Su-Che came out, Natasha Romanoff finally breathed a sigh of relief. To believe Wanda is to believe, but in the end it's better to see with your own eyes. Unconsciously, Natasha Romanoff raised the corners of her mouth, and shook her head, then pressed the headset and said, "Everyone, Sue is back, so unscathed." Chased all the way dozens of kilometers away. In the end, the vibranium that Ultron's mechanical legions took away was not brought back. But listening to the headset, Natasha Romanoff said that Sue came back intact. Steve breathed a sigh of relief, then found a place on the ground, no matter it was dirty or not, and sat down directly. Ha ha ha. Shaking his head, Steve doesn't even know why he keeps laughing. Anyway, the intense joy of regaining what was lost was even more intense than when I recovered from the ice back then. It's good to be back, it's good to be back, it's good to be back. Repeating the words over and over again, Steve looked up at the clear blue sky. At this moment, Steve inexplicably felt that this was the best news he had heard since he came back to life. Falling from the sky with a hammer in hand, he looked at Steve who was sitting on the ground. Thor stretched out his hand and pulled it up. Your uniform is probably not easy to wash if it's dirty. If you ask me, the washing machine is the greatest invention of the people on Earth. Listening to Thor's joke, Steve grabbed Thor's arm and stood up. Yes, the washing machine is indeed the greatest invention of the Earth, but I think the internet is also good. Patting Steve's arm, Thor twirled the hammer in his hand. Hearing the news of Sus' return, I feel that the grievance in my heart has been let go. Garden? Yeah. About you picking up the mustard that belongs to me, Mjolnir. Smiling at Steve, Thor said seriously, dude, you don't think I didn't find out? No, when I said whoever can pick up the Mjolnir will be king of Asgard. Natasha Romanoff and Tony have eyes on you. Don't even think about it, you definitely picked up my Mjolnir. Hearing what Thor said, Steve nodded without concealing. However, I don't want to compete with you for the throne of Asgard. Ha ha. He laughed heartily. At this moment, Thor felt that Mjolnir being picked up by Steve was not a big deal. Sue is still alive. Very nice, on the sea. Flying out of the sea wearing armor. After the moment he saw Su-Che with his own eyes, Tony Stark subconsciously swore a curse word. Then, regardless of the water stains on the battle armor, he flew forward and hugged Su-Che fiercely. Damn it, you're about to have an anxiety attack that worries me. After hugging him hard, Tony opened his armor and cursed with a smile. It's just that the eyes are red, and it feels like I have cried. But this one is a bit tougher. At least, when Su-Che teased him for crying, Tony Stark said that because the bottom of the sea is too dark to see anything, so turning on the light source inside the armor stimulates the eyes. Definitely not crying. Definitely not a towel. Inside the Avengers Alliance base. What a long day. As soon as he returned to the base, Tony Stark collapsed on the sofa. I hate today, thank you. As a result, after taking a sip of the lemonade that Rhodes brought over, Tony turned his head to look at Su-Che. I almost became your murderer. Listening to Tony's words, Su-Che took the lemonade brought by Sam. I can't even kill mushroom eggs, so buddy, don't think so much. Yeah, an existence that even mushroom eggs can't kill. Steve, who put down the shield at the side, heard Su-Che say this, and then answered. However, I think that the nickname Pepper gave you back then is more and more appropriate. Chaoshung. Mr. Superman. You know, when Mr. Superman entered the bottom of the sea carrying a nuclear bomb, I was terrified. Walking in from outside, Nick Fury held several boxes of pizza. But this time, although your mission failed, I think it is still necessary to reward you. Is there anything in this world that you are afraid of? Seeing Nick Fury walk in with several boxes of pizza, Natasha Romanoff got up and took the pizza. Also, are you going to reward us with this? While talking, Natasha Romanoff distributed the pizza to everyone. But Nick Fury said indifferently, having pizza is already very good, you know, although it is 6 o'clock in the evening, I don't think that you who have worked hard all day. And thinking about throwing a party. With that said, Nick Fury looked at Natasha Romanoff. Although I am the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., the premise is that I am also a human being. As long as a human being has something to fear. It's just that compared to other people, what I fear more is that you will fail. The pizza was distributed to everyone, watching everyone get up and wash their hands, and then began to distribute the pizza. Nick Fury said, everyone, although your action this time is very dangerous, I have to say that Ultron's strategy is still successful. Use that mushroom egg to distract Sue, and use the psychic scepter to control Dr. Banner. And then it took the psychic scepter as well as the vibranium in front of you. But, if absolute success, then Ultron has not achieved it. After all, it intended to use that mushroom egg to destroy the entire Avengers. It probably didn't expect that someone in the Avengers Alliance would be strong enough to resist the power of the mushroom egg. As he said that, Nick Fury sat on a chair, picked up a piece of pizza and ate it while saying, Ultron took a lot of vibranium, probably to create a body like Captain Rogers' shield. And according to the news from my contacts, it's not just vibranium that Ultron stole. But everything needed to create a body, Ultron took it away. What about the Ultrons? Have you tracked them down? Listening to Nick Fury's words, Steve raised his head and asked. It's easy to track because it's everywhere. Like a rabbit, seriously, this guy reproduces faster than a non-sterile rabbit. However, you can rest assured that Ultron has not fully controlled the launch code of the mushroom egg. Seeing Nick Fury's confident statement, Clint asked curiously, where did the mushroom egg that attacked us come from? It couldn't be made by Ultron himself, could it? It's time to ask some people, do you really want to know? Hearing what Nick Fury said, Tony Stark seemed to think of something. You mean? Damn, these guys really dare to do anything. They're not afraid to start World War III? After finishing speaking, Tony looked at the puzzled people and explained, when I was a student, I hacked into the firewall of the Heptagon building. Then I saw some amazing things inside. Yeah, our little Tony at the time got into an argument with somebody about his girlfriend, and bet on who could get into the Seventagon's firewall. Although we won, but if Mr. Howard Stark was not the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D. at that time, then counting the time, maybe our little friend Tony has not come out of prison. Oh, it's worth mentioning that the girlfriend of our boy Tony was also a member of Hydra. Listening to Nick Fury's explanation, everyone looked at Nick Fury curiously. Tony didn't hide anything, just spread his hands and said, who didn't have a rebellious youth when they were young? You should know, especially geniuses, the more rebellious they are. Listening to Tony's explanation, everyone lowered their heads and laughed and ate pizza. But Nick Fury continued. Having said that, I contacted my friends in Hyperlink, and they said, Hyperchain. What's that? Steve didn't understand, or didn't know what Hyperlink was at all, and thought it was another plan of S.H.I.E.L.D. On the other hand, Dr. Banner explained, the World Internet Center in Oslo will flow through there every 10 bytes of data every year. It is the fastest channel in the world. Putting down the pizza, Dr. Banner looked at Nick Fury and asked, what do the hyperlinks say? Ultron is very obsessed with large-scale weapons such as missile mushroom eggs. Looking at Su-Che and Thor who had already eaten, Nick Fury said seriously, Perhaps in Ultron's mind, only large-scale weapons like mushroom eggs and missiles can destroy you too. But the core code is constantly changing, so Ultron has no way of controlling real mushroom eggs. Putting down the side of the pizza in his hand, Tony Stark looked up and asked Nick Fury, "The core code keeps changing. Who is changing it?" "I haven't investigated who the unknown party is. In other words, we have an unknown ally, right?" Natasha Romanoff on the side said while chewing the pizza lightly. "Precisely, Ultron has an enemy, which is not the same concept, although I would pay a lot of money to know who he is. I maybe need a trip to Oslo." Cleaning up the lemonade in front of in one breath, Tony Stark looked at the crowd. "I think, as long as I go to Oslo, it is very possible to find this enemy of Ultron." With that said, Tony clapped his hands and focused everyone's attention on himself. "Everyone, from now on, let us get down to earth again and use our wisdom and will to save the world. Ultron has always said that the only thing standing between it and its mission is us, the Avengers. Whether he admits it or not, his mission is to destroy humanity. I am sorry that Ultron was created by me, so it is my duty to prevent its destruction. But obviously, I can't do it alone, and even almost killed Sue today. So everyone, I need your Emperor Lee. Together, with me, and completely, destroy Ultron." Evening. After washing, Wanda sat in front of the mirror wearing Sue Che's shirt, enjoying her boyfriend blowing her hair thoughtfully. After her hair was dry, Wanda got up and lay on the bed with Sue Che. "Honey, after you rushed into the sea with mushroom eggs today, Tony Stark almost went crazy." Pillowing on Sue Che's shoulder, while holding up Sue Che's hand and showing the file size with her own hand, Wanda said, "This is the first time I've seen Tony Stark not caring. Especially after seeing him rushing into the deep sea without any hesitation, I found that the last trace of complaints against him in my heart disappeared. Honestly, I didn't expect you, my dear, to have such an important place in Tony Stark's heart." Having said that, Wanda raised her head and looked at her boyfriend, Steve too, although he has always pretended to be very firm. Even after hearing me say you are fine, he can lead other people to clean up the battlefield. Still wanting to keep Natasha Romanoff by my side, lest I do something stupid. But when he left, even though he was trying his best to control it all the time, his hand holding the shield was trembling so badly. "My dear, it can be seen from this incident that you have a very important position in Tony and Steve's heart. How did you do it?" Seeing Wanda raised her head and asked, Sue Che slightly lowered her head and kissed her smooth forehead. "It's that simple." "What about me?" She tried her best to come forward and kissed the corner of Sue Che's mouth. 18-year-old Wanda looked at her boyfriend with a smile in her eyes. "Honey, who is more important in your heart, me or them?" "What do you say?" Gently stroking Wanda's hair, Sue Che asked with a smile. "Hey, it must be me." Burying her head on her boyfriend's shoulder, Wanda hummed softly. "I'm your girlfriend, I'm definitely more important, and I'm going to give you at least 2 babies." Speaking, Wanda smiled and was about to say something. But suddenly he saw his boyfriend's eyes froze. "What's wrong?" Looking into her boyfriend's eyes, Wanda subconsciously looked out the window. Despite thick curtains and one-way glass, Wanda can still see outside. Nothing happened outside, the moon and stars were still sparse. If anything, the moon is gradually being shrouded in dark clouds. Nothing. Seeing Wanda's slightly surprised look, Sue got up and walked off the bed. She still didn't forget to pick up the cool summer quilt and cover Wanda. "Go to bed first, I'll go out for a while, and I'll be back in a while." He lowered his head and kissed the corner of Wanda's mouth, and then Sue Che put on his clothes. "Then come back quickly." Although she didn't know what her boyfriend was going to do, Wanda smiled and nodded. Also got up to help Sue Che tidy up the collar. Leaving the room, Sue Che flew up into the air and left the She-Alien base. A few streets away, outside a shopping mall in the evening, where a group of people gathered. Some were calling the police, and some were calling for an ambulance. No one knew who the person who was thrown from upstairs was, but there were many onlookers. When Sue Che fell from the sky, the onlookers immediately recognized Sue Che. Watching a kind of excited crowd taking pictures of themselves and even screaming their names. Sue Che didn't pay much attention to them, but came to the corpse that fell from upstairs. Obviously, the one who remained down from upstairs at this moment is the famous Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One in the Marvel world. At this moment, Sorcerer Supreme has lost his breath, and his vital signs are gradually dissipating. Frowning and walking forward, Sue Che held up the body of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, ignoring the people who were constantly taking pictures with their mobile phones. flew directly from this place. Santiago Street. The place away from Santiago Street is the magic holy place in New York. Holding the corpse of Ancient One Magician, the soul body of Ancient One Magician appeared beside Su-che. Glancing at his own corpse in Su-che's hand, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One's expression didn't change in any way. There was even a hint of relief. Facing the Ancient One Magician's soul body that suddenly appeared beside him, Su-di was not surprised at all. Instead, when he was about to inquire, he heard the Ancient One Magician laughing. "I called you here. Just now your mental magic fluctuated, which was caused by my Waisandi magic. It's not because no one collects my body for me, but I hope that you are the only one who will send my body and body back to the magic holy place in New York." Hearing what the Ancient One Magician said, Su-che followed her guidance and rushed towards the magic place in New York with her dead body. While flying, he asked the soul body of Ancient One Magician, "Ancient One Magician, did your apprentice betray you?" It's not a betrayal, at most it's the discovery of the fact that he can't accept, and then he fell into darkness. Regarding his own death, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One was very relaxed. "Originally, you Avengers are worrying about Ultron at this moment, and I shouldn't bother you. However, I hope you can have some related events with Strange and other secret magicians. This may be my last sliver of selfishness at work. Su, your appearance has made this world a better place, and has also made this world full of safety." Speaking of this, Ancient One Magician smiled a little. "This is also the reason why I chose to return to eternity in advance. Although I can still suppress the dark magic, I can continue to draw energy from the dark magic to maintain myself. But in the end, I should return to eternity." Came to the magic holy place in New York. The slave soul of Ancient One Magician landed with Su-che for a week. Strange is the one with the best ability in our lineage, even though he still can't fully control some secret techniques belonging to the Sorcerer Supreme. But I believe that with the coming of Dormammu after my return to eternity, his mentality will change. Su, I hope that in the future, before he grows up, you can help Strange more at the right time. This is not a request, but the last request of a person who is about to return to eternity. Trust me, you will get unexpected rewards. While speaking, the door of Holy Place in New York, which was originally closed, slowly opened. Then some secret techniques magicians in the Holy Place came out. After seeing the body of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One held in Su-che's hand, the faces of these magicians instantly became ugly. Even, the soul of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is right in front of them. The Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is dead. Died a year before she was supposed to end her life. To be honest, Su-che has no idea how old Sorcerer Supreme is. But death is more like a relief to her. A liberation that does not need to draw on the magical power of the dark dimension to maintain itself. One can truly return to eternal liberation. Regarding death, Sorcerer Supreme was extremely calm, but for those secret magicians who came out of New York magic holy place, it was a bolt from the blue. Ancient One is the God in the minds of so many magicians, it goes without saying. Although this God is in quotation marks, it can be seen from the expressions on those mournful faces, but they have to accept it. Regardless of when Su-che saw that he had already got the cloak, but at the moment Strange had a bruised nose and a swollen face. And when the traitor was bound by magic shackles in the magic holy place, it was only then that Su-che realized that the Ancient One Magician wanted to let him know Strange in advance. Get to know her in advance, the character with the most ability among the previous Sorcerer Supremes. Put the body of the Ancient One Magician in the magic circle in the holy place. According to the instructions of the Ancient One Magician, Su-che handed the Eye of Agamotto containing the time gem to the bruised and swollen Dr. Strange. Well, although the soul body of Ancient One Magician is actually here. But these magicians. Never mind. This is a matter between other people's secret magicians, I still don't participate in the matching. After handing the Eye of Agamotto to Strange, Su-che said to him, "In the future, if you have any troubles that cannot be solved if you encounter dangers at the Earth level, then you can always come to me. This is my contact information." Pushing the business card into Strange's hand, Su-che nodded to the Ancient One Magician's soul body. Then he turned and left. How to dispose of the body of Ancient One Magician is to burn it to make it return to eternity completely. Or keep it and send it to the temple of Emperor Waishan. This is a matter of the magic holy place secret technique magician, and it is not good for an outsider to participate in his ministers. It's just that Su-che just turned his head away from the magic holy place, and walked out of the gate within 2 steps. I saw Strange chasing after him. Anything else? Looking at Strange, who was chasing him out, Suche asked. Why? Give me this. Looking at the eye of Agamotto in his hands, Strange's hands were still trembling. Not excited, but even after learning magic, the trembling hands caused by the car accident still haven't been repaired. Don't think so much, it's not that I like you, but Ancient One Magician's choice. Suche knew the meaning of the sign in Strange's words. What he really wants to ask is the candidate to take over the position of Sorcerer Supreme, the meaning of Ancient One Magician, or the Avengers' optimistic view of themselves. Well, there's a big difference. So looking at Strange, Suche said directly, although according to your current strength, you are not qualified to become the next reality dimension of the Earth, Asgardian cannot inherit the Supreme Being. And the name. However, your ability is the highest among the previous Sorcerer Supremes. This sentence was said by the Ancient One Magician. Saying that, Suche patted Dr. Strange on the shoulder. Don't think too much, there used to be Ancient One Magician, whether it was the Dark Lord Dormammu, Nightmare, or enemies from other planes, they didn't dare to do anything to the Earth. Any ideas? But now, after the Ancient One Magician passed away, they won't miss such a good opportunity. So, instead of thinking about so many things here, let's imagine how to solve the troubles that the Earth is going to face. You are the successor hand-picked by the Ancient One Magician, so this is your responsibility. Just don't disappoint the Ancient One Magician. Hearing what Suche said, Dr. Strange hesitated for a while, and then asked, Silver Moon Knight, when did you know Ancient One Magician, I mean? I've known each other a long time ago, but it's not in this universe. After I came to this universe, the Ancient One Magician didn't intervene too much. As for the Ancient One Magician of this world, I met her before, when I was facing the brother of the God King of Asgard, the Big Snake Cool. It's still the same sentence, if you have any troubles that you can't solve, then you can come to me at any time. After all, the Avengers Alliance and your secret magicians are also natural allies. After speaking, Suche nodded to Strange, then turned around and flew away. Watching Suche fly away, Strange held the eye of Agamotto in his hand, and then sat on the steps of the magic holy place. The Sorcerer Supreme is dead, so a person who was so powerful that he could only look up to him died so recklessly. This is absolutely unacceptable to Strange. Strange always felt that the death of the Ancient One Magician was definitely intentional. Moreover, according to the Silver Moon Knight who sent back the body of Ancient One Magician, after the death of Ancient One Magician, there will be countless supervillains and plane lords will invade the Earth. Well, although what Suche said inside and outside the meaning is that he is the successor of the next Sorcerer Supreme. However, even Achilles himself had to spend a lot of effort to subdue it. What do I use now to fight those supervillains and plane lords? I am not as powerful as the Ancient One Magician, and I can deter so many villains from coveting the Earth. Quietly that Silver Moon Knight said it. Dark Lord Dormammu, Dread Nightmare, Planar Demon. God. Is it by my own trembling hands? Leaning back, the whole person lay on the steps and looked at the moon covered by dark clouds. Ah. Among the previous Sorcerer Supremes, which one has the best ability? Even the very picky Magic Cloak chose himself. So maybe you can really do it yourself. After a while, Strange sat up from the steps, looking at the eye of Agamotto in his hand. How hangs it on his neck without hesitation? Well, since the Ancient One Magician chose herself, then her vision is definitely not wrong. Big deal. Learn more magic by yourself, if it doesn't work, you can still ask for help. Just like what the Silver Moon Knight said, the Avenger and the Secret Magician are born to be allies. Both parties have only one purpose, and that is to protect the safety of the Earth. Perhaps, this is also the reason why the Ancient One Magician chose Suche, the soul of the well-known Avengers Alliance, to send her body back. Etc. What Suche said just now is, he and Ancient One Magician have known each other for a long time, but not in this universe? And after he came to this universe, Ancient One Magician knew? What does it mean? Suche is not actually from this universe. Multiple parallel universes. Damn. I seem to know something amazing. Avengers Alliance base, inside additional residences. Originally Ultron was handed over to Maria Hill. But when I heard Suche rushing into the bottom of the sea carrying mushroom eggs. Nick Fury left directly from the SHIELD Trident building to go to a round with members of the Avengers Alliance. Although Nick Fury is very confident in the Avengers Alliance, he thinks that Ultron will fail in the end. However, what happened to Suche really frightened Nick Fury at the time. The Avengers Alliance can't afford to lose Su-Che, and Earth can't afford to lose a superhero like Silver Moon Knight. So Nick Fury felt that it would be better to sit in the Avengers Alliance base himself. At least, some extra help yourself. After discussing things in the afternoon and having dinner, Nick Fury wasn't ready to go to sleep. After all, as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., there are a lot of things to deal with every day. And he also likes to deal with all kinds of tedious things at night, in the dead of night. It gave him a sense of tranquility. For an agent, for a person who once had the title of King of Agents, it is very difficult to calm the mind. After all, not every agent is as lucky as Natasha Romanoff to have a family like the Avengers Alliance. After finishing the work, the time has come to more than 11 o'clock in the night. Moved his muscles and bones, and picked up the cold coffee on the table. Well, all the coffee in the Avengers Alliance base is provided by Ta Hualin Cafe. This is much better than your own ground coffee. After taking a sip of coffee, he habitually opened the Black Gold Diary. Nick Fury suddenly discovered that the Black Gold Diary has been updated naturally. Originally, I just read it once a day, so as not to miss anything. Unexpectedly, the Black Gold Diary was updated. You must know that in the past, updating a diary for a few months is already very good. But now, it was less than 10 days before the last diary entry. Su-Che actually updated again. This made Nick Fury put down his coffee cup and his expression became serious. If there were no major events, then Su-Che would never update the diary so frequently. Subconsciously, I reached out to open the computer next to me and enter the record page. But he reacted quickly. I am now in the base camp of the Avengers Alliance base, rather than the Trident building's own office. The most secret computer I definitely don't have with me. Shaking his head self-deprecatingly, Nick Fury flipped through the latest diary update. Hey, the Black Gold Diary and the computer that only you can open seem to be standard configurations soon. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, the Asgardian of the Earth's reality dimension, is dead. Died a year before the end of her fate, at the hands of the disciple she taught, Caecilius. She did it on purpose. According to her strength, if she doesn't want to die, then no one on Earth can kill her. But now, she died so recklessly that she used magic to notify me to help collect her body, and so recklessly let me meet Strange. But obviously, Strange wasn't ready, so when I mentioned Nightmare and Dormammu, his eyes were full of confusion. I know that the Ancient One magician has full confidence in Strange, but the current Strange is not the Doctor Strange behind him. Even with the Eye of Agamotto, I am still a little worried, whether he can really guard the Earth like the Ancient One magician, and deter these foreign overlords. Look at the beginning of the latest diary. Nick Fury frowned momentarily. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One dead? Died so easily? Although I don't know this Asgardian, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One of the Earth's reality dimension that Su-Che recorded in the Black Gold Diary. But Su-Che once mentioned her existence in her diary. It is precisely because of her existence that many truly powerful enemies dare not covet the Earth. But now, this Sorcerer Supreme simply died. And according to Su-Che, she chose to die on purpose. This baffles Nick Fury. What kind of person would actively choose to die when she possesses such a powerful strength? Is it because life is enough? This is not in line with common sense. How can one live enough? And look at what Su-Che said in the latest diary in the Black Gold Diary, that Strange is not ready. What to do to prepare? To succeed Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One and become the new Asgardian of the so-called Earth reality dimension. But obviously, Su-Che's tone didn't look like he was optimistic about him. And Dormammu, Nightmare and the like, although the name is weird. But at first glance, it is not a good existence. Thinking of this gave Nick Fury a headache, but there was an extra guess in my mind. Although Su-Che was not optimistic about Strange being able to take over, Ancient One magician chose to end her life at this moment, according to what Su-Che said, 10 years in advance. So is there a possibility that although the one named Strange is not ready yet? But what Ancient One magician is really optimistic about is actually Su-Che. Because Su-Che was there, plus she watched Strange. So she can safely choose to die. After all, Strange is her favorite, and Su-Che is the Avengers Alliance and even the most powerful superhero on Earth. Once the two help each other, there will inevitably be a situation where 1 + 1 is greater than 2. All of a sudden, the brainstorm continued to blow. Nick Fury felt that he really wanted to see the truth of the matter. Otherwise, according to what Su-Che said, there are so many magicians. Why did the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One still use magic to notify Su-che to help her collect the body after she died? Obviously, this is to entrust Su-che. I hope Su-che can help take care of those magicians who are not ready yet. Well, especially the guy named Strange, who is not the future Doctor Strange that Sudi said. Thinking of this, Nick Fury frowned slightly. Then read on to continue. The Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is dead, but after all, the Earth still has the Avengers Alliance and Susan. Nick Fury felt a little calm in his heart, but other places within the 9 realms are not so calm. Well, it's about Asgard. At least, when Queen Frigg saw the news in this diary that the venerable Asgardian, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, the Earth's reality dimension, had died. He didn't even have time to read the content below, so he got up in a hurry, ready to go to Odin to tell the news. Nick Fury doesn't know what the death of the Ancient One magician means. But Frigga is very clear, when Queen Frigga finds God King Odin. At the moment Odin is dealing with Jotunheim. Since Lof, the king of ice giants in Jotunheim, was killed by Loki's design. Jotunheim has been in a state of turmoil. Without Lof, Jotunheim began to split. This also made other countries in the 9 realms covet Jotunheim. Jotunheim without Lof will not pose any threat to Asgard. But once Jotunheim becomes the territory of other countries, Asgard will face a more powerful enemy than Jotunheim when Lof was there. This is something Odin doesn't want to see, and he knows how long he has been holding on. Before entering the Soul Castle, he had to handle these difficult things well, in order to avoid even bigger troubles when Thor succeeds him. What's more, after entering the Soul Castle, Hela is destined to break the seal and break out from Helheim. By then, Ragnarok would have had enough for his son Thor. I'd better deal with the affairs of other countries within the 9 realms first. So, when Odin, who was dealing with the Jotunheim matter, watched Queen Frigg rush over, then he smiled and said, "Don't worry about the Jotunheim matter. I have already asked Zion and the others to lead the Asgard soldiers to suppress the rebellion." Listening to Odin's words, Queen Frigga's anxious pace began to slow down. Then he walked slowly to Odin's side. "What's wrong?" Seeing Frigg's expression, Odin was a little surprised. The Sorcerer Supreme from Earth has returned to eternity. After sighing, the request addressed Odin. Ancient One Magician returned to eternity? Hearing Frigga's sigh, Odin was slightly stunned. It shouldn't be. That Ancient One Magician has been absorbing magical energy from the Dark Plane to maintain his life, and there is no such thing as Midgard. Halfway through the speech, Odin stopped talking. After a while, he sighed. It should be the Ancient One Magician who is tired of continuing to live. Putting down the things that need to be dealt with, Odin sat on the throne and said to Frigg, "As a person who can live a long life, sometimes, living originally is a kind of torture. Ancient One Magician, as an Asgardian in the reality dimension of Midgard, may have already been tired of the secular life in the long day after day. I think, she should have found an heir to the next Sorcerer Supreme who she thinks is qualified, so she chose to return to eternity without any hesitation." Speaking of this, Odin said with emotion, "That's good, for Ancient One Magician, this might not be a relief." Listening to her husband's words, Queen Frigga nodded slightly, but he still opened his mouth and said, "I'm just worried that the return of the Ancient One Magician to eternity will have a very big impact on Midgard and even the 9 realms. You should know that while she is alive, those extraterritorial overlords and pretenders in the dark world don't dare to step into the earth or even the 9 realms. But once she returns to eternity, those ambitious guys probably won't let go of such a good opportunity. I'm worried that once Midgard falls into the hands of those people, there will be chaos in the hatred. After all, no one knows whether the successor of the Ancient One Magician will possess a strength as powerful as hers that would be feared by foreign overlords." Facing Queen Frigg's worries, Odin has a different view on it. Ancient One Magician's love for Midgard is no less than our love for Asgard. I believe that she must have made sufficient preparations and trust before she chose to return to eternity. Otherwise, she would not be free at this moment. Having said that, Odin stood up from the throne, smiled at Queen Frigg, and said, "Let's go, since the Ancient One Magician chose to return to eternity, let's go see her off. At least, as an old acquaintance, as an existence who has guarded the 9 realms together, we can't let her return to open the eternal road so alone." Hearing her husband's words, Frigga nodded without any choice. It is also necessary to give a gift to an old friend. Besides, she is still so respectable. Helheim. Hey. The Asgardians in Earth's reality dimension have chosen to return to eternity? Seeing the latest diary on the black gold diary, Hela sneered indifferently. I'm afraid this choice will make that hypocritical guy Odin feel deeply moved. Hela actually didn't care about the fall of Ancient One. After all, apart from Asgard, Hela has only one idea about other countries and planets in the 9 realms. That is conquest. But for those dark lords and foreign overlords that Su Che wrote in the Black Gold Diary, Hela was full of interest in Hela's heart. After breaking the seal from Helheim, the first thing to do is to personally behead Odin, who sealed him, to complete revenge. The second thing is to lead Asgard's fighters to capture the 9 realms, making Asgard the only hegemon in the 9 realms. And when the 9 realms are completely under the control of Asgard, at that time, it will be people like Su Che who lead the warriors of Asgard and other countries who surrender to themselves to conquer the universe. And now, the warriors of Asgard can't wait to achieve unprecedented glory under the leadership of their queen. As long as he thinks of these, Hela's heart surges. Hela is very confident about this. After all, back then I was holding Mjolnir and riding Fenrir. The warriors with Asgard were invincible. Warriors of Asgard will definitely miss that time very much. Well, this is reflected in the movie. At least when Hela returned to Asgard, proudly proclaiming the return of their queen. When it turned out that the warriors of Asgard didn't even know who she was. Tisk, thinking of this, the corners of Hela's mouth rose proudly, and then she turned her attention to the Black Gold Diary again. Ancient One magician chose to return to the time point of eternity very ingeniously, at this moment as the node of the battle between the Avengers Alliance and Ultron. I don't know if the Ancient One magician did it on purpose, although she told me with magic after she died, and used her corpse as a medium to allow me to meet Strange. However, I know what will happen after the Ancient One magician dies. The Dark Lord Dormammu came under the call of the believers. This will be the first test Strange will face. 1. The next morning, inside the Avengers Alliance base. Everyone, I found out about the Oslo World Internet Center. Looking at the crowd, Tony Stark said the news he got. Just like what Nick Fury said, the reason why the weapon codes of the Mushroom Bank are constantly changing is because we have an unknown ally. And according to my investigation, we all know this ally. Seeing Tony stop talking halfway, everyone felt helpless. Steve shook his head, and said directly, "Kong is busy, Tony, it's about this time, so don't keep it to yourself." Okay, my fault. Spreading his hands, Tony looked at everyone with a little joy at the moment. Actually, our ally is none other than Jarvis. As he spoke, Tony shook the chip lightly, and in the next second, a golden circle, 267, holographic image symbolizing Jarvis appeared in front of everyone. Good morning, everyone. Greeting to everyone. Anyone can hear that this voice is the voice of Jarvis. Very good. Seeing that Jarvis is not dead, Steve has a smile on his face. With Jarvis, we don't have to worry that Ultron will control the internet and all satellites, and thus know our every move. But last night I kept thinking that Ultron wants to destroy us, wipe out all humans, so as to complete the idea of AAAA protecting the Earth. So how is he going to do it? Or how is it going to be better than us? After all, yesterday, we easily defeated Ultron. Listening to Steve's inquiry, Tony frowned and said, "He has always wanted to build a body, a human body structure. After all, it claims to be the so-called new human being. However, the structure of the human body is not efficient. From a biological point of view, in fact, our human bodies are all outdated and backward. So what exactly does Ultron want?" Listening to Tony say that the human body is backward, Natasha Romanoff looked at Tony and asked, "When you and Dr. Banner created Ultron, didn't you add a program to it? And when you're fighting it, don't forget that it's a nuisance to you, Tony. Why does it hate you? Is it because of your creation of it or because of its fear of you?" "I don't know either." Looking at Natasha Romanoff with a cup of coffee, Tony Stark spread his hands. "Maybe, it also thinks that from a biological point of view, I am a backward father figure." "No." Dr. Banner, who was silent all the time and was thinking all the time, heard Tony's words at this moment. Suddenly his eyes lit up. "I thought of it, Tony, when we created Ultron, we programmed it to protect the Earth, but since Ultron was born, it has been calling itself a new human being. This shows that in its cognition, human beings don't actually need to be protected, what they need is evolution. That's why Ultron, the guy who calls himself the new human, wants to destroy us, so as to create a more perfect race. Overall, Ultron needs to evolve." As Dr. Banner's voice fell, everyone looked at each other. "Evolution, Bruce, how does Ultron need to evolve?" Steve was the first to ask Dr. Banner. "That. Does any of you know Dr. Helen Zhao?" "I know." Hearing Dr. Banner mention Dr. Helen Zhao, Tony Stark said immediately. I still appreciate her regenerative cradle technology very much. I know too. Nick Fury, who was sitting on the sofa, nodded. Dr. Helen Zhao is not affiliated with S.H.I.E.L.D., but has cooperated with S.H.I.E.L.D. If Ultron really set his target on Dr. Helen Zhao, then I think you Avengers Alliance should attack now. Hearing what Nick Fury said, the others nodded their heads. On the contrary, Natasha Romanoff turned her head to look at Su Che, who was sitting by the side and remained silent all this time. Can't help but ask curiously, Su, you haven't said a word since just now, do you have any thoughts? Listening to Natasha Romanoff's words, everyone looked at Su Che curiously. Not just Natasha Romanoff, but Steve and Tony too. That's why during the discussion just now, the two of them always focused on Su Che. I have no idea. Watching everyone turn their eyes on him, Su Che said. Everyone, since you know Ultron's next move, or the move he is preparing to execute, go and stop it. And you? Looking inexplicably at Su Che, who was not planning to participate in this operation, Tony frowned and said, Dude, what happened? It's nothing. After getting up and tidying up the solemn clothes, Su Che looked at the crowd and said, Wanda and I cannot participate in today's action. Because we're both going to a funeral. As he spoke, Su Che shook the funeral invitation letter in his hand. In the face of Su Che, although all members of the Avengers Alliance are very curious, whose funeral Su Che and Wanda are going to attend. But they did not ask politely. Only Nick Fury nodded. He knew that Su Che was going to take Wanda to attend the funeral of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, the one recorded in the Black Gold Diary. Turning to look at Natasha Romanoff. Find out that Natasha Romanoff doesn't seem to know. Well, it seems that this person hasn't read the Black Gold Diary for a long time. At least I didn't watch it last night, alright. Standing up and looking at the crowd, Steve said seriously, Sue and Wanda are going to attend a funeral, so today's operation will be led by me. After speaking, Steve looked at Su Che and nodded, indicating that he would complete this action. After more than 10 minutes, everyone was ready to board the Quinjet fighter. Soon, the fighter plane left the Avengers Alliance base and went to the place where Dr. Helen Zhao was. Watching the fighter plane leave, Su said to Wanda, we should also set off. Nodding slightly, Wanda's expression was very solemn. This morning, my boyfriend had already told himself that he was going to attend Zun's funeral. And introduce the deeds of that Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One to himself. Seriously, for Wanda, who is now a member of the Avengers Alliance reserve team and already knows the responsibility of the Avengers Alliance. That Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is indeed a respectable elder. At least, according to her deeds, to be able to attend the funeral of such a character. It should be an honor indeed. The two were about to head to the garage and drive to the magic holy place in New York. In the next second, a few golden sparks appeared in front of him. Then a circular golden portal appeared in front of the two of them. Temple of Vishan Emperor. Follow the golden magic portal to the Waishandi Temple, and behind you is the endless abyss. Looking down through the abyss, you can even see white clouds floating between the cliffs. In front of it is a huge amount of coffin, surrounded by magic circles engraved with golden stripes. And above the coffin, a divine book is floating above the coffin. Watching Su Che focus his gaze on the book, the Magician King, who took Su Che and Wanda over with the magic teleportation array, explained, this book is the sacred book of our secret magician, and it is also a must for us when we send the Sorcerer Supreme of all generations. We, the mystic magicians, believe that the Book of Vishandi will lead the lost Sorcerer Supreme back to eternity, free from the invasion of the magic of the Dark Plane. Listening to Wang's explanation, Su Che nodded slightly. On the other hand, Wanda looked at the Waishandi book and frowned, but didn't say anything. In front of the huge amounts of coffin, the body of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One was lying in the coffin intact. Seeing Su Che and Wanda coming, Strange stepped forward and extended his hand to Su Che. Su, thank you for coming to participate in the farewell ceremony of Sorcerer Supreme. I heard from Elder Mosti that this is the first time a magician guest has appeared in the farewell ceremony of the Sorcerer Supreme in the past. Stretching out his hand and shaking Strange's hand, Su Che said softly, it's my honor. Sorcerer Supreme's return to eternity's farewell was simple. There is no such thing as a priest commonly used in the West, and there is no such thing as telling various ceremonies during his lifetime. Instead, accept Su Che and Wanda as farewell guests. All the magicians gathered together, and dazzling magic was constantly displayed in front of the coffin. From the simplest teleportation array to the mirror space that only a few people can use. Bright magic is constantly unfolding before the coffin of the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. The entire Waishandi temple was shrouded in brilliant magic light. It seems that the magic displayed does not need to be powerful, but only gorgeous enough. It's more like a show. After quietly asking the king, Suche found out. This is a farewell gift from Sorcerer Supreme. It symbolizes the glorious past of Sorcerer Supreme being sent off and the glorious future of Magician. This is the first time Wanda has seen such a variety of magic, and the crimson magic at the fingertips was quietly born all of a sudden. But soon, Wanda dissipated the magic from her fingertips. This time is not the time to learn these magics, this is disrespect to the Ancient One Magician lying in the coffin. Accompanied by all kinds of gorgeous magic slowly ended. All the magicians stopped the magic in their hands at this moment. Bow down and chant magic spells that Suche and Wanda can't understand. Gradually, the golden stripes on the coffin began to glow gradually. Just as the golden magic circle on the coffin was shining brightly, Seping seemed to feel something. He turned his head and looked behind him. There was nothing behind him, except for the bottomless cliff a few meters away, there seemed to be nothing. But Suche could clearly feel that there were two people standing there. Nodding towards the empty place, Suche turned his head and continued to look at the last farewell gift of Ancient One Magician. Well, I didn't expect God King Odin and Queen Frigg to arrive in person. It's a pity that among the people present, except for himself, even the sky didn't feel the aura of these two people. The chanting of these esoteric magician incantations grew louder. The golden magic circle on the coffin became more and more gorgeous. Gradually, the body of the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One lying in the coffin gradually turned into grains of golden light floating up. Then it flew into the sky like a ray of golden breeze. Seeing this scene, all the secret magicians stopped chanting incantations, and then all turned around and looked at the horizon. The whole farewell ceremony didn't take long, but with all kinds of splendid magic displays, it took nearly an hour. After the ceremony was over, the radiance emitted by Waishandi's book gradually disappeared, and then the whole book also began to dissipate and return to its place. The empty coffin was also closed and sealed by these secret magicians, waiting for the next Sorcerer Supreme to pass away before continuing to use it. It can be seen that this coffin should also be one of the treasures of the secret technique magician. After the ceremony, Suche turned around and saw Odin and Queen Frigga smiling and nodding towards him. Then he turned and left. These two didn't show up, and they didn't say anything to these secret techniques. That's right, after all, she is the God King and Queen of Asgard. The reason to bid farewell to Ancient One Magician is that during the period when Ancient One Magician became Sorcerer Supreme, he had some friendship with these two. Otherwise, Odin's elder brother, the big snake Kur, wouldn't have been sealed on Earth, because he didn't help strengthen the seal. So it is also appropriate for people to come to see off old friends. They don't have much friendship with the current V magicians. And where is the status? Unless the next Sorcerer Supreme can really achieve the strength of having the Ancient One Magician. Otherwise, to put it bluntly, their status is really not comparable to that of the Odins. As for nodding goodbye to myself, probably also because of his own strength and being friends with Thor. After the ceremony is over, the next step is the secret magician's own business. It is definitely impossible to choose the position of the next Sorcerer Supreme now. Although the Ancient One Magician was very optimistic about Strange, Suche and all the magicians knew all about it. But the current Strange strength of is not enough to bear the title of Sorcerer Supreme. So, take your time. When Suche and Wanda left, Strange hesitated again and again, and asked with some uncertainty, Su, when you brought back the teacher's body last time, you told me about the Dark Lord Dormammu, Nightmare and other lords outside the domain. Are they really going to come when the teacher is gone? Well, what Strange wants to ask is, if these guys really invade the Earth, what should he do? A little guilty, after all, Strange is not Doctor Strange. Well, not even the three-eyed Doctor Strange. Facing the guilty Strange, Suche did not answer directly, but said in a slightly encouraging tone, You are the most promising student of Ancient One Magician, since she is willing to return to eternity at ease, then it means that she is interested in you or full of confidence. I am more convinced of Ancient One Magician's vision, so be confident. As he said, Suche pointed to the eye of Agamotto hanging around Strange's neck. Since you can use it, it will tell you how to take on the responsibility of protecting two in the reality of Earth. Patting Strange on the shoulder, Suche led Wanda into the golden magic teleportation array. As the teleportation circle disappeared, Strange looked down at Eye of Agamotto. Apparently, Eye of Agamotto doesn't seem to be able to speak. Avengers Alliance base, in the villa where Su-Che is located. I always feel that the Book of Emperor Wysandi has something to do with me. Sitting on Su-Che's lap, Wanda hugged her boyfriend's neck and said seriously, "Anyway, when I saw the Book of Wei Shandi, I felt very hopeful. Even the crimson magic in my body began to surge. Honey, I remember you said that my magic comes from chaos energy. It is origin magic power with the ability to change reality. Then tell me, can the Book of Wysandi allow me to upgrade from crimson magic to origin magic power?" Listening to Wanda's guess, Su-Che thought for a while, then shook his head. "The more I am not sure. The reason why you and Pietro awakening an ability that surpasses ordinary people is because it originated from you originally. As for advancing from your current ability to origin magic power, I'm not too sure if you need the Book of Wysandi. However, I think that maybe in the Book of Wysandi, there are records about origin magic power and ways to improve ability. Maybe one day in the future, I'll say hello to Sorcerer Supreme, who takes over the position of Ancient One Magician, and see if I can let you use the Book of Wyshanbelt to learn." "Thanks, dear." Soft lips kissed Su-Che's cheek, and Wanda smiled brightly. "The next Sorcerer Supreme to succeed Ancient One Magician, is that strange who chatted with you? It should be him, after all, my dear. Ancient One Magician is very optimistic about him. If there are no accidents, then it should be him. But, who can say for sure what will happen in the future?" Hugging Wanda's waist to keep her from slipping off his lap. Strange will become Doctor Strange, but according to the setting of the original movie, the Supreme Master is the king. If Thanos snapped his fingers, Strange turned into ashes and disappeared for 5 years. Holding her boyfriend's hand holding her waist, it slipped down a few centimeters. Wanda bit her lip lightly and leaned close to Su-Che's ear. "Honey, there is no one in the Avengers Alliance base, and no one will bother us." I felt a trace of orchid-like heat coming from my ear. Su-Che patted Wanda's bigu lightly. "Have you thought about it? I want to give you 2 babies as soon as possible. What are you waiting for?" Holding Wanda's leather drum, he let a pair of slender legs be clamped around his waist. Su-Che walked towards the bedroom with the giggling Wanda in his arms. "Well, don't forget to use psychokinesis to close all the doors and curtains. An 18-year-old girl is immature in her youthfulness, but she can feel all the beauty in the world. There is a youthful rhythm in the gentleness, which makes it easy for people to indulge in it and cannot extricate themselves. The trickles converge and gradually condense into a galloping sea. Well, water is the source of life for all things. Some people enjoy life, some people create life, and some people want to kill a life. At least, when Clint Barton threw the shield at Steve. Watching Steve take over the shield and smash the robot in front of him, Tony, who came to support him, couldn't help but tease, "Captain, did you just want to strangle a robot to death?" Faced with Tony's ridicule, Steve didn't take it seriously, and watched the Quinjet fighter fly with the body of Ultron Vibranium in the regeneration cradle. Can't help frowning. Natasha Romanoff is still on that fighter plane. Ultron directly took the body made of vibranium in the regeneration cradle and left with Natasha Romanoff. "Tony, you need to support Natasha Romanoff immediately, before the fighter plane flies far away, otherwise." "Don't worry, Natasha Romanoff did it on purpose." Before Steve finished speaking, Tony Stark's palm energy cannon swept away the surrounding robots. Looking at the panicked people around, he said to Steve, "Natasha Romanoff asked Ultron to take her away on purpose. Captain, you didn't notice that there is only a groove inlaid with mind gem on the forehead of Ultron's vibranium body in the regeneration cradle, but there is no mind gem? That is to say, Ultron hid the psychic scepter, and Yangchuang will never let people find the scepter until the last step. Just like what Sue said, Vibranium Ultron and Vibranium Mind Gem Ultron are not equivalent bodies at all. So Natasha Romanoff deliberately pretended not to escape the Quinjet fighter jet, in order to let Ultron take her away, and then find a way to find the psychic scepter." As he said that, looking at the crowd around him, Tony Stark said to Steve, "Captain, this is not a place to talk, maybe we should change to another place." Facing Tony's words, Steve held the shield and nodded. Glancing at the Quinjet fighter that had disappeared into the sky, he still said with a trace of worry, "Ultron has always wanted to destroy the Avengers, and Natasha Romanoff is also a member of the Avengers Alliance. In case Ultron wants to kill Natasha Romanoff, then..." While talking, Steve jumped off the stopped bus. "So I asked Thor to follow quietly, and at the same time put a life detector and a nano device glove on Natasha Romanoff's wrist, and gave her permission to open the nano glove. Once Natasha Romanoff's life is really in danger, she can immediately activate the nano gloves. In this way, she will definitely be able to hold out until Thor's support. While speaking, Tony wore his battle armor and got into the off-road vehicle that Clint drove over. Tisk. I still don't have enough space. Maybe Clint, you should find an army with more space. Listening to Tony's rant, Barton shrugged. After Steve got into the car, he started the car and said while driving, 3 things. The first thing is, no matter what kind of space the car is, Tony, you will feel small in the armor, and it feels that the ground of the car is lowered. I can't find you an RV, Joe. Second thing, folks, Natasha Romanoff was captured by Ultron, so who will fly us back in a Quinjet? In addition, I can fly a Quinjet fighter, but the only Quinjet fighter has been driven away, that is to say, we can't go back now. Listening to Barton's words, Tony and Steve looked at each other. What about the third thing? Steve looked at Barton. Barton didn't speak, but Dr. Banner, who was sitting in the co-pilot, said, the third thing is that the two of you should think carefully about how to explain Natasha Romanoff being taken away by Ultron to Sue and Wanda. Everyone knows that Natasha Romanoff has a very high status in the hearts of Sue and Wanda. Avengers Alliance members are not stupid, in fact there is one in the Avengers Alliance. Who hasn't experienced many things, and all the experiences are like human beings? Definitely, except for Thor. Everyone can tell who is sincere and sincere to whom, and who is false to whom. It's like Su-Che, if he didn't exchange his heart for his heart. Then neither Tony nor Steve can place Su-Che in an extremely important position among them. They could definitely feel Su-Che's sincere affection for them. Similarly, they can also feel Su-Che's feelings for Natasha Romanoff. It is not a relationship between men and women, but a relationship similar to that of family members. A kind of not very expressive emotion. It's not that kind of filth or love anyway. So when I heard the third item Dr. Banner said, Steve and Tony glanced at each other. Sue, you should understand. Although Natasha Romanoff's deep into the tiger's den, action this time is somewhat dangerous. But they can check Natasha Romanoff's vital signs at any time, and Tony also left Natasha Romanoff with a nano device glove as a guarantee. And there's Thor support at all times. So although it is dangerous, Tony and Steve have a lot of confidence in Natasha Romanoff. And I think Su-Che should also understand. It's hard to say about Wanda. After all, Wanda was raised by Natasha Romanoff as a guardian. Wanda and Pietro have always treated Natasha Romanoff like a sister. Had I known that Natasha Romanoff was in danger, I'm afraid. Well, with Su-Che here, Wanda should be able to calm down. Damn it, that P-Jack was driven away by Ultron. How do I wait for others to go back? Can't wear armor by myself, leave Dr. Banner, Steve and Clint here. Thinking of this, Wang Ni picked up his mobile phone to contact Hawkeye. Luckily, Tony Stark is a billionaire, so we still have private jets. In the evening, inside the New York Avengers Alliance base. Looking at the few people who came back in a Quinjet fighter. Su-Che folded his arms and said, Tisk, it seems that this operation is not so smooth. You even have to take a private plane back. Also, what about Thor and Na? Listening to Su-Che's inquiry, Tony and the others looked at each other. It was still Steve who explained. This time the mission is not completely successful. After all, Ultron's consciousness has not yet entered the vibranium body in the regeneration cradle. So that kind of Ultron is still easy to deal with. If it didn't hide the mind gem, maybe this time it would be considered a relatively successful operation. Speaking, Steve told Sue-San and Natasha Romanoff what happened. Walk into the conference room and listen to Steve tell the whole mission. Before Su-Che could speak, Wanda directly frowned and said, so, Natasha Romanoff took the initiative to choose to be captured by Ultron, and then use this to find Ultron's hiding place in the psychic scepter? It's too dangerous. Turning to look at her boyfriend, Wanda was really worried about Natasha Romanoff. Even with what Steve and Tony were talking about, the nano gloves, life detectors, and Thor. Take it easy and trust the wisdom of Natasha Romanoff. Seeing Wanda's worried expression, Su-Che patted her arm, signaling her not to worry so much. Where are the two from the reserve team? Looking at Steve and Tony, Su-Che leaned back on the chair and asked. You are not used to only a few of us moving, so you forgot that Sam and Rhodes also followed, and then left them behind. How can this be? Spreading his hands, Tony said that he was not that unreliable. I asked Rhodes and Sam to jump off the plane and go to the Trident building on the way. Always keep in touch with S.H.I.E.L.D. once Ultron's hiding place is densely populated. Then we need the power of SHIELD to help evacuate the crowd. I don't want to see ordinary people get hurt. Hearing what Tony said, everyone nodded. Only Wanda is still a little worried about Natasha Romanoff's safety. Don't worry, Wanda. I will let Jarvis monitor the data sent back by Natasha Romanoff's life detection belt. Once she is hurt, I will immediately contact Thor and ask him to rescue Natasha Romanoff. Seeing Wanda's worry, Tony Stark said very seriously. At the same time, Quinjet fighters have been flying in the air, and the more they fly, the more remote they are. No one knows the final destination of the Quinjet fighter. Anyway, Natasha Romanoff, who was caught, was sitting in the corner, listening to the nagging of Ultron in front of her speechlessly. I don't know if this guy has been unable to speak since he was born. Anyway, in Natasha Romanoff's opinion, this should not be the level that a villain should have. Perhaps it was the analysis of Natasha Romanoff's thoughts. Ultron sat opposite her, and said in a low voice mixed with electronic voice, "As you think, I am different from you. You can have friends, family, lovers, but since I was born, I have only myself around me. So, I often look at the night sky alone, thinking about why the meteorites outside the sky are so pure. Whether it hits the atmosphere or falls on the moon. Boom. One will start all over again." Having said that, Ultron pointed to the body of vibranium in the regeneration cradle, which was continuously sending energy at the moment. "That body is a meteorite I gave to the Avengers, to Earth. I think, when this world is destroyed and waits for new power to rebuild, then a more beautiful new world will surely bloom. And I am the new power to rebuild the world." Listening to Ultron's unique electronic sound, Natasha Romanoff sat in the cabin. "I have to say, your idea is really naive. In fact, I think your program must be wrong. That's why I came up with this idea." "Really? Then maybe everything you think should be blamed on that disgusting Stark. I should have been so beautiful, like the stars in the sky. As long as someone looks up at the starry sky, the world can see hope. However, because of Stark, because of you, and because of the Avengers alliance, when the world looks up at the stars, it can only see fear. You've hurt the world." Listening to Ultron's chatter, talking about the Avengers alliance's guilt theory, Natasha Romanoff suddenly laughed. "So, you are still afraid of us?" Natasha Romanoff is right. Ultron is afraid of the Avengers. Having been punctured with the fear in his heart, Ultron did not become angry. Instead, she sat on the ground, looking at the widow with red metal eyes. After a while, Ultron said, "I am indeed afraid of you, or rather, I am afraid of people. Your Avengers plan to protect the Earth makes me sick, because all the enemies are you brought them on. As for humans, their existence makes me feel alone. From the beginning of my birth, I have been alone. Although I have built a lot of robot legions, they are all toys that seem to have no brains. Song knows how to obey orders. Well, I don't deny that I envy you humans." While speaking, Ultron stood up from the cabin floor. Looking out at the bright starry sky through the glass of the cabin. "Whenever human laughter and laughter appear in my ears, I feel more and more lonely. I think you should understand me. After all, you should also be very envious of women among other human beings, who can have their own babies." Hearing Ultron mention this, Natasha Romanoff frowned instantly. Although she desperately wants to be like a normal person. But the surgery in the Red House made her unable to have a baby of her own like a normal woman in her life. Just Natasha Romanoff's biggest wound deep inside. Just uncovered the fig leaf in Ultron's heart, but now the wound in his heart was torn open by it. "Don't look at me like that." Facing Natasha Romanoff's eyes, Ultron spread his hands. "I have information about everyone in Avengers. I have to say that the only thing humans have invented and used is the internet. On the internet, I can find anything that interests me." Having said that, Ultron looked at Natasha Romanoff again. However, it is very strange that in the Avengers Alliance information, even Thor Odinson, the Prince of God's domain from Asgard, has detailed information. However, SHIELD has little or no information about Suche. Can you tell me why? Listening to Ultron's words, Natasha Romanoff, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly laughed. "It turns out that you also have something you don't know." "No way, neither Stark nor SHIELD has recorded any information about Suche online." Looking at Natasha Romanoff, Ultron said seriously, "Nick Fury has a confidential folder, although the password can prevent anyone from viewing it, but it can't help me. The only pity is that he installed a layer of insurance on that folder. I tried to enter, but the password has just been unlocked, and all recorded file data were destroyed immediately. This should be the preparation made by Nick Fury. As long as someone wants to snoop, the data will be destroyed immediately and cannot be recovered. Having said that, watching the Quinjet fighter jets about to land, Ultron said to Natasha Romanoff, "By the way, although Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. have no information about Suche. However, some minded people of the World Security Council have built a not-so-complete file. And, according to the content of the file, I guess it won't be long before someone finds Suche. That's why I say that human beings are actually a very sad creature. Although from your human point of view, Suche led the Avengers to save the world time and time again. He is a superhero. But the group of minded people in the World Security Council, Guowang holds you, superheroes, in their hands." As the plane landed slowly, Ultron motioned for the robot to pull Natasha Romanoff up, who was sitting on the cabin floor. "How about it? After hearing this news, are you disappointed? This is the human being you have always wanted to protect. It's a pity that in their eyes, you are just a group of knives that can be used. Anyway, they think that as long as they convince Suche to sign the agreement, the entire Avengers alliance will agree." Being dragged by a robot trying to get off a Quinjet fighter. Natasha Romanoff broke free from the robots and walked down by herself. While walking, Natasha Romanoff said, "You are right, Ultron, human beings are indeed very pathetic. Even sadder, there are a lot of people who want to hold the Avengers alliance in their hands and turn it into a knife or a tool. Although they are human beings, they cannot represent all human beings." Staring into Ultron's eyes, Natasha Romanoff said firmly, "Sue once said that we exist to protect the Earth and all human beings. This is the meaning of Avengers." Hearing Natasha Romanoff's sonorous answer, Ultron shook his head in disappointment. Ultron is a lot like the guy who made Natasha Romanoff his gang. Because the new human beings in this world only have themselves, which is simply too lonely. If Natasha Romanoff wanted to, Ultron felt he could even create a whole new body for her. A brand new body capable of uploading consciousness and becoming immortal. But it is a pity that the fate of being sorrowful, because of having a human body in the past, does not allow her to accept a new fate and stand on her side. He waved his hand with some disinterest and let the robot take Natasha Romanoff away. Ultron raised his head and looked up at the stars, muttering to himself, "No one will understand me, and no one will ever understand me. Perhaps, this is the fate that a savior of the Earth should have. After all, a true hero is always alone." Sighing mechanically, Ultron turned and walked into the gap between the broken buildings. Obviously, there were traces of human habitation here. A few hundred meters away, on a hill. Watching Ultron walk into the building, the induction belt on his wrist didn't flicker, let alone turn red. Thor pondered for a while, and decided to just lie down here and observe the situation at any time. According to Tony, when the sensor belt on his wrist starts to flash, it means that Natasha Romanoff is in trouble. When it turns red, then Natasha Romanoff's life is in danger. Not to mention, it's pretty amazing. Although I don't know where Loki is at the moment. Maybe if he knew that there was such a thing, he should get one for Loki. In case Loki disappeared for such a long time, there was neither news nor did he know if he was in some dangerous trouble. Thinking of Loki, Thor couldn't help turning over and looking at the sky full of stars. Loki. He is really a worry-free younger brother.